Welcome to Homicide Life on the Set, a podcast about the Emmy Award-winning television show Homicide Life on the Street, with myself, Chris Carr, and Susan Ingram. On today's episode, we're joined by Cathy, Kerry, Greer and Tracey from the production office. Hello everybody and welcome back to the podcast. So today's episode is all about the production office, which is a world of fax machines and pagers because this was the 1990s. Before we get going, Susan, how are you?
Good. Yes. Fax machines, pagers, red Sharpies, whiteout, typewriters. I mean, it just is really interesting to revisit that and think about how a production got out all the information they had to get out without email and without cell phones and texting. That's just a trip to think about right off the bat.
It is. It's amazing. I think a lot of people would be completely lost today without all the technology that we have. So, to think that films functioned without email is pretty mind-blowing in this day and age.
And at the speed they had to do it. I mean, this huge production that was constantly, we're working on shooting this episode and prepping for the next episode. And the amount of logistics they had to handle with, Luddite, sort of, the mechanical aids as opposed to electronic aids.
Yes, indeed. And that would have added to the stress and tension, as we will hear in a short while some of the stories that they have for us. And so this is the production office. And one big note that we wanted to say is if Jim Finnessy was still with us, he would definitely have been the person we would have approached for this interview. But unfortunately, he did pass away many, many years ago. And Jim Finnessy was instrumental in the production of Homicide. But we will hear a little bit about working with him from Cathy, Kerry, Greer and Tracey.
Yeah. I think their comments about the sort of trickle down of how he kept the production together and the loyalty factor and the family factor is interesting.
Yes, indeed. Just note to listeners, Kerry leaves early, so she sort of disappears about an hour into the conversation, and I've edited out her exit just purely because it flowed better by not hearing her leave, because we had a lot of chatter around. So I figured it was just better that she just vanishes from the conversation, which I apologise about. But she sort of gracefully disappears. So if you're listening and wondering why Kerry just vanishes, that's from the power of editing.
Yeah, she had she had to get on the road. She had a prior engagement.
Yeah, she was calling us from on location somewhere.
Happy she could join us, yes.
Well, I think let's get into the episode and then we'll catch you all on the other side. I hope you enjoy this one.
It's a long one. Sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, pour your favourite drink. This is a long one, but it's well worth it. And we hope you enjoy it. Cathy, Greer, Tracey and Kerry, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you all on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to see you all. So when was the last time you all saw Susan?
Oh, at the reunion.
At the reunion.
Yeah. And Kerry, I see really often because we started hanging out after we reconnected at the reunion, which was really nice.
Yeah, it's old lady lunch at 4:30.
It is. I love it. I love it. So many of my friends, I don't know if you guys too, so many of my friends moved away. And so, it's really nice to have a good friend close by. Say, hey, meet me at Fraser's on the Avenue, hon. It's our favorite place.
The reunion was fantastic. So thank you all for who organised it. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. As an outsider coming in, it was really brilliant.
Yeah. Yes, we're missing writer's office Stephanie Fontana here today because her and I kind of conspired at the beginning to, all right, it's time to get this ball rolling because people over the years have approached both of us and probably many of you saying, "Hey, let's have a reunion. We should have a reunion." And during the pandemic, Adam Laws, who had worked in locations, set up a Zoom meeting for Homicide crew and cast and, anyone that wanted to join. And so that was, a great way to start people getting together. And then the call to have an actual in-person reunion came out. And then Greer was really instrumental in that planning too, helping to find people. Because as Susan just mentioned, people kind of have gone to all corners of the earth. So finding everyone, discovering who wasn't with us anymore, that whole process took a lot of legwork. So.
Yeah, and we did want to give a shout out to Stephanie, because we are going to have Stephanie on a later podcast. I want to have her with her husband, Chris, and some other representative production assistants from other departments, and sort of have a production assistant podcast, which I'm hoping to. Actually, Stephanie, I'm going to get in touch with you real soon. So we didn't forget Stephanie, for sure. So cool. So should we just jump into the questions?
Yeah. Go for it. Do you want to kick off and then?
Yeah, go ahead. So let's see. I'm just going to go by the way people are on my screen. So let's start with the first question. How did you guys? What were your pathways into production and into the production office? And let's start with Cathy. And then, what were your pathways to the production office, and why production instead of, there's a million different departments you could be in. How did you guys end up in production? So go ahead, Cathy.
Sure. So I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I had gone to college, left college for a little while, lived in LA, and just had fun. Wasn't really thinking about the film business. Moved back east to Philadelphia and went to Temple University in their radio, television, and film program, and was interested in filmmaking, got that degree. And one summer during that program, I came to Baltimore and did an internship at a local commercial production house. Met a lot of crew here in Baltimore and kind of saw that Baltimore had a fairly active production scene with movies that would come into town to shoot on location, shoot part of their movie on location and the rest, back in a studio. And there was a thriving commercial production industry here as well. So finished my program up in Philly, and I got a call from a girl I'd met that summer. They needed an office PA on Barry Levinson's Avalon movie. So I threw some clothes in a bag and came and stayed with some friends in Baltimore and worked on that movie in the production office, because that's what they needed. And I found right from the get-go, I really liked that environment. I liked knowing everything that was going on, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it was just a really solution-oriented kind of environment. Knowing Barry and the kind of folks he worked with back on that production, and then coming later to Homicide, it was a similar kind of thing, really high quality people that were very driven to the craft and very solution oriented. Left Avalon, I worked on Rocky V up in Philadelphia, again as an office PA, and they took me back to LA with them. So I got to see that Sony lot that we shot on, and, went and dropped off production reports and call sheets and all these different offices there. And just kind of, we worked in the Chartoff Winkler building across the street, and had, just got steeped in that LA film culture and found that really interesting. Came back east. There was a movie shooting here. I think the next thing I did was maybe Homicide the movie, which had nothing to do with this show. David Mamet, the playwright, had directed a few films, and this was another project of his. So I just kept getting work here in Baltimore. I went out of town at some point and worked on a Richard Gere, Jodie Foster movie in the mountains of Virginia called Summersby. And did a few other movies in between that. I guess there was a movie called That Night, Juliette Lewis and C. Thomas Howell worked on that. Katherine Heigl was a child star on that movie, and then she grew up to, come into her own in different ways. And so when I came back to Baltimore from working on Summersby, Homicide was working here and had done the episodes of the first season, and they were kind of wrapping up. And I tried to reach the production office and say, hey, I'm in town. By that time I was an assistant coordinator, I should say. So on Summersby, the firm and the DC end of it, I was APOC. That night, I guess I was APOC. So I really just liked that production office atmosphere. And I was dating Joe Kurtz at the time, the key grip who you have interviewed before. And the crew was having kind of an end of season party at Pearl's bar. So I went with him to the bar and I sat down next to Jim Finnerty and started talking to him.
Well, there's a good origin story in a bar. What a surprise for Homicide.
Yep, exactly. There's a raging party going on. And he finally said, why are you here? Like, who do you know? And I was, Joe was, I guess, the best boy at that time. And he was like, oh, a grip. So he took a shine to me. And next season, I was the production coordinator.
So funny. Wow. What a surprise. And I want to interject for our audience, the production office, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. And I want to say also, I feel bad it took so long to get production office people on the podcast. But as a crew person, you're so focused on the crew, and hardly ever hung out in the production office. Didn't know everybody in the production office, so I'm so happy you guys are here now. But the production office, basically, for people who don't know, are, like Cathy said, the people that coordinate every single thing. They coordinate the whole show, the logistics of the whole show, getting out scripts and rewrites of scripts, and the call sheets and changes on call sheets, and just, the logistics of the whole show. And later we'll talk a little bit about some of the super challenges. Cathy mentioned a couple of the shows that were incredibly challenging, like Hostage 1 and 2, just because of how big of episodes it was. And also the episode that we started shooting when the blizzard of '96 hit, and how that threw the production office, into chaos, because nobody could get into town and we had to shut down and all that. So for everybody out there who doesn't know, production office are the people that take care of the whole show, basically. So after that, Kerry, so what was your start and how did you get there? Kerry is I think the only person here that was on the first seasons 1 and 2, correct?
Yeah.
So how did you get into the business and how did you end up on Homicide?
I was a student at Towson University back in the day when it was a lot of the players that we all know now: David Butler, Sean Murphy, David Berger, Brian Keller, Chris New, Trevor Kilgore. All of those people came floating out of the film lab, which was the equivalent of the cage at UMBC. It was specific to the film subdivision in mass comm, and I was the first woman that worked in the film lab back in 19. And then
it was earlier than me, so you don't have to do that.
Yeah, no, it was 82.
I was earlier than you. I was earlier than you. Anyway, go ahead. I'm older than you is what I was trying to say.
I know. We talked about that. But I think I'm as old as dirt. So, I was, while we were at Towson, at that time we were shooting, Super 8 or 16 and had access to the cameras and the editing suite. And we'd run out the door and shoot something on the weekend and come back and cut it. And we all worked with each other and for one another. And David Butler had written a script and they needed the Loch Raven Reservoir Bridge. And, they were all like, the boys were all like, oh, no, we're going to get this bridge. And I was like, well, let me start making some calls. So I eventually circled all the way around the county, got the permit, got the bridge shut on a Sunday. And when I was walked out with the Fisher Dolly and the crew and I was standing there, I looked around and I was like, I fucking did this. I did this. So we made the movie and that caught the bug, and we worked a lot during school. If Brian Keller and David Berger had a shoot at Eisner, we would all just leave school and go work on the job. And, we were as experienced. I walked out of Towson with a reel, which was quite intimidating at the time. And I walked into Lenny Levin's office, God rest his soul. And he was like a big commercial director, shot a lot of 35 at the time. And with Erich Roland and Loazo and Marco, and I came into the story, and I walked into his office, and he was like, "You're hired." And I was like, "Okay." So I produced for Lenny for a couple years and started working for Tom Trahan, another really wonderful commercial director in Baltimore. We shot hundreds of commercials. And then I heard about through Paul Calhoun and Joe Traber. I heard that like there was, this buzz with that this New York PM was coming down, and I got in a car with, Finnerty and Paul Calhoun and drove around Baltimore and just kept saying, "You can crew it here. You can crew it here. You can crew it here." So, for lack of a better word, we had season 1, which was there was a lot of misfit toys, but that's kind of what we all are anyway. But I fell in love with production when I was in college. I knew when I was a journalism concentration, when I took my first film class and got the job in the lab and got the bridge, I was like, this is the only thing I want to do. I want to take somebody else's vision and make it happen. Like, no matter who they are, I didn't care who was directing, I didn't care who was shooting. So that was the bug for me. It was never about the money. It was always about the job. So Jimmy hired me as the assistant coordinator because the coordinator season 1 was Diana Schmidt. And Diana moved on to be the executive producer of Sex and the City, and I'm assuming has retired quite comfortably. So season 2, Cathy came in the door, and I was in the chair down right down the road a piece, and she was amazing and lovely, and we had a great season.
Oh, cool. Good. Oh, great story. And so Greer, you're on my screen next. Hi. How did you get into production and get to Homicide?
Well, my mom is in the business. And so as a teenager, I interned on different local Baltimore shows. And so it was like, it's summer, you're not doing anything, go to set. And I was kind of like, this is insane. Like, this is like 1,000 degrees, you're dunking cloths with sea breeze and ice, and, all the things that you're like, oh my God, this is totally crazy. I mean, I loved it, at the same time, because it was always something different, and there's no normal day. There's no, all of those kinds of things. The people I found really interesting on the sets, different than maybe you might see, in different offices, corporate structures and whatever. But I swore it off. I said, I'm not going to do that. And I went to college and studied like psychology. And then sort of towards the end of my time there, after doing a lot of field work, I was like, let me take a film studies course. Let me toe dip back in here and see what I think. There was a lot, it was, the psychology element was really hard. The field work I did was hard. So in a different way.
Great background to have psychology when you're working in a production office.
I honestly am like, I could not have remained where, in this business if I didn't. I'm like, oh, I know you. When someone comes in the office.
You check all the boxes, right?
Exactly. And then I, like Cathy, I kind of graduated, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And it was the summer of 95, and Homicide was looking for people in the office. And my mom was like, I know you say you don't really want to do this, but like, there's a job, and why don't you make a call and see whatever. So
and you can tell us who your mom is.
Pat Moran. She does casting.
Right.
So I talked to Cathy and to Jim, and they were nice enough to hire me. And I really kind of, the idea of the office then intrigued me. I was like, okay, I've done the set and I love it, and it's, crazy, and I know all of the things, and it's like the same kind of people with the same mentality, but I felt like I was going to learn more. Whatever I did there in the office, I felt like I could parlay to something else if it wasn't for me. But I loved it. I loved all of it. I loved the Rubik's Cube of it. I loved the logistics of it. Cathy said something to me when I started, and she said, everything that comes across your desk, read it. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm allowed to read everything. So I was sat at the fax machine, so I got to read everything. But it really helped me kind of learn and understand what things were or why things were happening. It put context to really, so many things that we were doing. And seeing the script and then watching the director come in and then watching everyone meet about the script and then go out to see locations and then come back and have discussions and meetings about what they saw and what worked and what didn't work. And just the office was pretty small for Homicide, or the year that I was there, or the years that I was there. So you could hear everything. I mean, you could certainly hear Jim, but you could hear sort of everything. There are a lot of animated conversations. And I just thought the way all the pieces worked, I thought was really interesting. And to this day, I mean, as I've continued throughout my career, it's different. I have to now blend creative with logistics, but that's like the new challenge, and that's also interesting. I think at first when when I first started in the office, I didn't really understand how like the artistic elements were meeting with all of the logistical elements in a certain way. And as I was there for a number of years, I realized more and more, I'd hear why things didn't work, or why we had to get a location, or why we had to get an actor, or, sort of the balance of those two things, I think, became really, really interesting, and why I've managed to stay in this career for so long.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Tracey, you're next. How did you get started, and how did you get to Homicide?
So I was a UMBC student.
And you were? Oh, after me too.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I had studied a few film courses, a number of film courses. It probably equated to a minor that I never made official. And then was in the English program there, and wound up, because of a connection through the Tremont Plaza Hotel, got to interview for an internship in the writer's office. Cathy interviewed me. It was an awesome interview. I right away liked the people who were there, because we are all a little bit kooky and a little different. And I loved everything about it. So I got to do an internship in the writer's office season 3. And then in season 4, after I graduated, I was super lucky to get to make my way over to the production office and to be hired. And it was fantastic. So I was the film runner in the beginning. And then they couldn't lose me. I stayed the rest of the time. They couldn't get rid of me.
They couldn't get rid of
you. Nor do we ever want to.
Thank you.
Cool. So I'm going to start over with, and Chris, jump in here if you want. I'm just going to start over with everybody and talk about what you do. Like what, I know one of our later questions is what's a typical day, but what did your position entail? What were your job,
We touched every department. I think that's one of the things that we can say is every department touched us, and we touched every department.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was like, that's a lot. It's just, but that was what the magic was having all that intel and information and processing, and being able to kind of like look ahead after day 1, season 1, the train left the station and it just never stopped. And it was prepping for the one, it was wrapping out the other one, it was editing, it was the shooting, it was all, there was never not a moving part. So I look at it like I don't know what we didn't, other than drive a truck. I don't know what we didn't do.
Right. And I want to go back to something Greer said, and then Cathy jump in about, you talk how you would think about your job description. But Greer said she sat next to the fax machine. Now, we have to remember, this was 30-something years ago. So there wasn't email and texting. There were beepers and fax machines. And so it occurred to me when you said that, yeah, like we may call the camera rental house for an item or two, but if we're doing, a big order, of course, we would be down there prepping, doing a big order, but it would go through a fax. It wouldn't go through an email. It wouldn't go through a text. It would go through the fax machine, all our deal memos, all the communication with people that had to be printed wasn't sent by email. It was sent by fax. So it's a different technology world back then, and a lot slower. And people have talked about the production office strips, where you physically had these strips on a big board to show, where the scenes were and where the locations were and stuff. So Cathy, jump in. So what would that was a great description, Kerry, this idea of touching every department. Cathy, how would you describe it?
Yeah, kind of maybe like if you think of an old wagon wheel, the production office is kind of the center. And we do, all those spokes go out to all those different departments. And like as the production coordinator, I'm usually the first person hired. So, and then you have to start setting everything up. So you set up an office, you order all that equipment you just talked about, you get desks in there and chairs and things like that. And then you start interviewing crew. So at each new season, most people were coming back that had worked on the season prior, but there would be change ups. Some people had gone on to other projects. Some people didn't really gel with the production, so moved on for different reasons. Different creative thoughts wanted to be brought into the mix. So, new department head would be hired, or certain parts of that department would be hired. So you get your crew in place, you start ordering equipment, you start making deals for the grip truck and the electric equipment, camera equipment, and things like that. We moved we started out with getting a lot of things from New York, and Kerry could talk more about that from that first season. But then as the seasons went on, it became more and more local. So like Tracey mentioned, she was the film runner, and she was taking that film to DC. And I know you guys talked about that in the Camera Guys episode. And they're just bringing people in out of town. The casting is going on. So you're starting to get names for that first episode, at least, of who the cast is going to be. What hotels are you going to put them in? You have to make deals with the hotels to get people in there. Directors from out of town, local, a lot of the deals for department heads that came from out of town or for the main cast, they lived locally in houses. So they needed to connect with real estate people. And how do they get a house where their wife and kids can come down, or some people wanted to be near the set in Fells Point. Some people wanted to be more out into the countryside so they could have a work-life balance and as much as possible in this industry. So you kind of are getting all those things going, and then you're putting more staff on in the production office. You're doing rebuilds on the stage. Your people are out scouting. Vince Peranio is, figuring out what the locations are going to be, what he wants them to look like. There's all kinds of meetings going on that you're facilitating. There's food to be had. There's dailies that come in and need to go to people. There's reports that need to get sent to LA and New York. There's, the list just goes on and on. So it is a constant hub of activity. And with a movie, you're prepping one thing, shooting one thing, and wrapping one thing. And then you come to television, and it's mini movie over and over again in this overlap. So once we get everyone shooting, everything's up and running, problems are solved, people are shooting, and then you're just in that machine. Now a new director's in town, and new cast are being hired, and and the process is overlapping and starting over again. So,
quick question. So, what was the budget for one episode of Homicide? And it probably changed over the years, but what generally was it?
That's a great question. And I definitely have piles of budgets and things here, but I can't say that the number is coming right to my mind. So. But, they have the amort budget. So that's all those costs that each episode gets a little piece of that cost, and then you have each episode budget. So you're always trying to balance those, and Greer could maybe even speak more to that in her later roles, but trying to balance and always lower that budget, because the less money you can spend for the highest quality product that you can get is always the aim. So,
and this never occurred to me, of course, because I was on my blinders on the set. Was there separate budgets for like the camera budget couldn't go over a certain amount, or the grip and electric budget had to stay in a certain amount, or the Teamsters and the trucks had to stay within a certain amount?
The way I always saw it, I mean, the budget is a multi-page document, so
sure.
And there are sections for each department. Yeah, absolutely. And Greer, again, you might be able to speak more to that
Greer,
about television budgets.
You do, as Cathy's saying, an amort, which is basically something that's amortized over every episode, right? So it's like a set build. If you're building, let's say, the squad room for Homicide, for example, that's going to be a set that's in every episode or almost every episode. So that would be in the amort budget. Sort of sets like that, or a closet for the actors if it's their overcoats and maybe some suits or whatever, something they're going to wear over the whole season. Those are your amort. And then you have a pattern budget, which is a budget that you do that's basically a guideline for each episode of what you're going to spend, but they go up and down. I mean, they hover around a similar number, but like your first episode, maybe your last episode costs more money. And then you have to have episodes in the middle that balance that out. Sometimes a show will go all out, and then you might watch it and be like, wow, this whole episode's on stage. It feels like a stage set. Everything's inside. It's a bottle episode. So that's an episode. It's just a way that they create something in the story that moves the story along still, but you're able to allocate money and to get people hooked to watch, and then to want them to watch another season, maybe, let's say. And those are kind of like the traditional, I guess, ideas or ideologies, I think, that I've experienced in working with budgets. So does camera have a certain budget they have to stay in? They have a pattern budget that's the guideline, but does this episode need a swing and tilt lens, or whatever it is?
Helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, drones now, whatever it is, you might have those, but you might then try to cut back in either someone else's department or that episode to balance it, or know that, we're going to do a pretty traditional shooting method with the normal amount of crew and not additional labor and whatever in another episode to try to account for it. It's just it's a balance kind of all over the place that you're trying to achieve, so that you serve the creative, so that you serve putting the money where it needs to be for whatever the story is telling you.
And do you want to add anything to what Cathy and Kerry said about what your job was in the production office as a APOC? Because you were APOC as well. Kerry, you were APOC, and Cathy, you were the production coordinator, correct? And
Correct,
Tracey, you were production office assistant, correct? I have all those titles correct? Is that correct? Yes?
We kind of moved around. I mean,
So anything to add to that worldview?
In the later seasons, maybe the last season, I was the production coordinator. I don't remember. I remember, I think that, like Cathy and Kerry are kind of saying, you touch everything. You touch everything. Even to like the studio side of it, right? So you're even dealing with, when you're dealing with insurance, and you're dealing with like even those kinds of things that seem you might not think about when you're watching a movie, but it's like one of the first things I think about because of my experience, right? You watch a helicopter and you see maybe what the helicopter does, and you're like, how'd they get insurance for that? You know what I mean? So like, it's kind of like, it's different the way you watch it. Like, I feel like when I first started to work on sets, I thought about extras and, things like that I never maybe thought about when I watched a film. When I started working in the office, I thought about everything.
Mm.
I thought about everything because literally we had to deal with the studio and the actors and the, all of the things and some of the things that seem fairly straightforward, like getting an actor to set, are not. So
only feels straightforward to somebody who's not in the business.
Oh yeah, getting phone calls that we were a big Amtrak show because we were in Baltimore, so we got a lot of our actors out of New York. Fantastic, we had fantastic local actors too, but we got a lot out of New York. And I remember getting calls at 2 a.m. from an actor who will remain unnamed about
you can say it, we'll just bleep it out. It's okay.
Yeah, it's more fun usually.
Yeah, it's more fun if you say it and we bleep it out.
I didn't make it on my train, and I was like, and I think so at that point I was APOC because I was doing travel. It was always that thing on the travel memo, like your phone number. You're like, oh God, I hope nobody needs this. And had to get this person on the train the next day. Then they didn't have a credit card that worked. So I'm the APOC. I'm putting up my credit card. Let me talk to the person. Let me talk to the agent. Because, at that point, nothing was email.
Oh, my God.
Nothing was whatever. They were at the booth. I'm like, and I know what it is in Penn Station. I went to college in New York. So, if you're in the line and then you get out of the line, it's a long time to
forget it.
Yeah. So I was like, don't get out of line. I'll just give you my credit card number. Give me the person on the phone. So I guess that could be called some of our troubleshooting that we would do.
That is the tip of the iceberg of troubleshooting.
Right on.
Yeah. That you're
oh, good. That'll be a later question. Troubleshooting question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then
I told Susan about the story that I have no shame about this. I will say it. There's a lot of things I won't say on this call, but all the actors season 1 had very strict instructions. If they had a rental car, the rental car could not be driven out of state. That was part of the insurance deal. This was way back in the day. So I will never forget the morning that I got the call from 3 a.m. And he says, I've got some bad news. And I said, what's that? And he goes, the car got stolen. The rental car got stolen. And I said, okay. We're working on a cop show. This is not a problem. Give me where is the car parked? And he goes, Manhattan. And I was like, I'm sorry, what the fuck did you just say? And he's like, I took the car to New York. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I was flipping out. And then, I get everything. I don't even really remember how that got course corrected because in a given day we were like fire persons. We had 8 extinguishers. Whatever one was canister full, we were going to exhaust it. And he comes back to Baltimore, and Jimmy goes, "What, you telling me you don't fucking know you can't take the car out of state?" And he goes, "Harry never told me that." So I'm just going to describe to you what boss meets Harry meets Jim. Like this. It was and I had no recourse at all. But you're not wrong about all of the things at 3 a.m. I mean, there's, and then, again, it's I was working on Swagger and there's a picture of me and Yaphet and Ned Beatty sitting on my desk and I've got a cigarette and they're both in my lap. And the kids in the thing look behind me and they go, "That's the biggest printer I've ever seen in my life." And I said, "That's not a fucking printer. It's a typewriter." Right. And I thought I died and gone to heaven. It was an IBM Selectric. It had yes, we were living on whiteout, but this motherfucker was the workhorse. And I was so excited about it. And I go, "We didn't have a printer." And they go, "What do you mean you didn't have how did you do call sheets?" I'm like, we typed them up and then we copied them." And they go, "Well, how did you get them out?" And I'm like, "Underneath the hotel room door."
Hand delivered.
And they're like, how did any of that happen? And I was like, been making movies since 1938. So I figured it out then. I guess we're figuring it out now.
Gosh. So, Greer, anything else to add to that?
Well, what's interesting about Kerry's story is that it's a rental car. So the same actor, after they get there, want a rental car. And it wasn't in their deal, whatever. So I'm on the phone with the actor, and I think it was the weekend. And I'm on the phone with the actor, and they're like, "We want to rent. Need you guys to rent me a rental car." I'm like, "We can't do that. We can't do that for actors because it's not in your deal, but also because we can't really control. I mean, studios caught on to what, happened with you, and like you can't really control their
everyday lives,
their activities.
It puts you in a spot when you're trying to tell the actors what they can and can't do during their personal time. So the car ties you insurance-wise and everything else to their personal life. So I said, we can't do that. And I got the conversation like, it's really hard for me to come down here to try to do my best work when people aren't helping me out, and like the whole thing. And I was just like, there's a reason. Every rule we have, there is a reason why we have it. And so Kerry has basically said in season 1 what happened. I'm talking about season 5. And of course, at that point, they had to rent their own cars and be reimbursed if it was a part of their deal. And that was the way we sidestepped what happened with Kerry in season 1 by season 5.
Oh, gosh.
Did it get named the rule?
Or even season 2. We didn't rent them cars in season 2.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't
they had
think
to rent it themselves.
I think Greer was talking about a different actor, right? Than
correct.
This was a different actor.
Different actor. Yeah. Then
Yeah.
the rule.
Cool.
It was
led
no
to that,
rentals.
Yeah, it was the same actor who had missed their train.
Right.
So circling back to this idea of not saying people's names and things, our whole careers are steeped in the idea of privacy and secrets because
you knew everything, right?
That's
you
just
knew
how
everything.
it works. So in the production office, I had a laptop full of information. I had all the main cast's private Social Security numbers and, contracts and all kinds of deal memos for people and day players. And it was, we're trusted with this privacy and these secrets and things that happen in their private lives with their exes and their, other movies they might be trying to work on, and that they need swim lessons if they're going to work on this movie because they don't know how to swim. And, those things are private about people's personal lives. And so we have this vault kind of naturally built into us where we just don't talk about a lot of things. So it does feel weird to share stories.
Until today, the vault is open. No, just kidding. So Tracey, you had a different experience. What was your job? And I would imagine as a production assistant in the office, you did lots of different things. And tell people what a film runner does, if that's what you started out as.
Sure. So the film runner role, there's a lot of errand running going on and a lot of just being an extra set of hands wherever you're needed within the office. But to run down to Rockville every night was a big feature of it. It was a great deal of fun. I would go to Color Lab down in Rockville, and there was a film processor there who put on a pot of coffee for me every night and just sat me down and would jabberjaw with me and make sure I was good to go to get back on the road.
Oh, that's cool. Do you remember his or her name?
I want to say his name was Ed, but I do 30 years. I really do think I'm a little foggy
That's okay.
on his name.
We all
I
are.
wish I weren't. Yeah. No, he was lovely. He always took good care of me.
And was it only the first season that the film went to Color Lab, or was that 1 and 2?
I think it always went to Color Lab. I started out in the 4th season in the production office.
Yeah, it went to New York after a certain point, right, Cathy?
I think it started in New York. Kerry, isn't that right? I think at the beginning, we weren't, Jim had come down from New York. Everyone had come down from New York. What was local, local resources weren't as well known. So I think it started out with everything in New York.
Oh, okay. And that
switched
was the Color Lab.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a runner, and they were, of course, that was the Amtrak. You put them on the train or a bus at the end and sent them up there at the end of the run, and they went to Kodak, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what
Didn't
we did.
have Reels on Wheels?
Yep.
Wasn't there? I don't know why that name has always stuck with me. It was a great name.
Yep. We have Reels on Wheels.
Yes, they were a great service. They would pick up film from sets all over the East Coast of the whole country and get them to the lab. Yeah.
And did Stephanie's husband, Chris, come? Was he the film runner before or after you, Tracey?
After I was. I think
it went through. Continue with your story.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's so you would do that sort of all hours of the day or night, depending on what the filming schedule was anyway. And so some nights it was a little more brutal than others. It was nice to sort of graduate from that. But there, I think, were a few film runners over time. And then eventually, I think it transferred to the Teamsters. Am I wrong about that? Does anybody remember?
I do recall Teamsters making some runs for one reason or another. I don't remember if they did it regularly or not, but it's very possible that they did. Yeah.
Yeah, you would think I would remember who the film got passed off to, but I don't remember. I do remember Chris sitting on the tailgate. And waiting for the film sometimes. But so go ahead, Tracey. Sorry.
Oh, that's
so
okay.
after film running, then what? Talk about your office experience.
Then I went to production secretary. There was sort of like a very systematic sort of hierarchy to everything, and everybody had their own roles, which was a really, I thought, such a clean, streamlined way of working out a system of sort of like we were organizing chaos in that office, I feel like most of the time. And so then I became production secretary and filled a bunch of roles that I can't recall exactly anymore, other than there was a lot of maybe FedExing, there might have been a lot of faxing involved, and eventually assistant production office coordinator. And that's a lot of travel arrangements, workers' comp, insurance stuff. A lot of travel, though. A lot of travel for every episode. And that was sort of the run of it. But it was just a great place to be. I grew up there, essentially. Like, I was just so young beginning. Greer and I are of similar ages. I think we're about the same age. And so it was great to be there with other young people. Cathy was an amazing boss. She taught me all kinds of things so seamlessly, and always with a smiley face with every request, right? Like, I'd come in and there would be a stack of papers on the desk with a post-it that said, "Could you please file these?" Smiley face. Like, you'd do anything for that. So I don't know. Lots of fun.
So who's, for instance, at the end of the day, let's say they decide to change the call time, and these, basically hand-typed, handwritten copies of the call sheets that had already gone out have to, or about to go out, have to get changed with a red, Sharpie. Who does that? Did everybody in the office take 25, or did you really? How did that work?
Yeah, that was all hands on decks. The ADs would come in. Yes. Second ADs. And that was
literally hand change it, hand write it.
Yeah. There was like you might remember this, Susan, on the front door, we had taped like a manila envelope, legal size, sliced open, so it was like the mailbox, and that's where call sheets went. And so at the end of the night, if somebody needed one, they'd come and grab it right out of there. You never wanted that to go empty. I remember the one time it went empty, I saw somebody reaching. I ran to the copier, got it, gave it to the person, shoved some full into the envelope again. And I think somebody else got fired like the next day because she just didn't react, and it would have been her job. Yeah.
Ooh.
No, I mean, like, I knew it in my gut to take it seriously, but I didn't realize it could lead to somebody getting fired.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
I think there were other things involved there.
There might have been.
So
my memory serves.
Chris, jump in. I feel like I've hog-tied the conversation.
No, it's great hearing what you say. Jim Finnessy's name comes up a lot in conversations I had in the past. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about sort of what his role was and how you kind of worked with him, and I guess any memories of working with him as well. And I'll start with Kerry, because I know you've got to leave a bit later, so I'll let you start, and then I'll open it up to people.
Jim was, the first boot on the ground when it came to the show, with reference to the first season scouting and just looking at the lay of the land and looking at Henderson's and looking at the pier, which was, completely dilapidated, with pigeons were still living in the squad room. It was just a disaster zone. And, but it was about his ability to sort of see the biggest picture in that. And I was an underling. So he was he was a true a UPM. He was the production manager. He oversaw, of course, alongside Paul Attanasio and Tom. And he was an enigma. He was an operation master and a budget guru, and there was a lot to learn from Jim, and I hope that I absorbed as much of that carrying forward after I left the show as possible. And I came in the door with legs, but I felt like I walked out the door on stilts in that way. So he was that's who Jim was for me from a first impression standpoint. Very commanding audience, very charming, but very, no, there was no sugarcoating anything. And that's kind of a necessary evil, I think, when you're doing that job. You just got to be real frank about it.
Right.
Yeah, Jim Finnerty. Wow, what an interesting man and character, and certainly a Baltimore legend, and a New York legend, and probably has legend in LA as well. And I'm going to circle back to the fax machine because one time I was sick for 2 days. God only knows how that happens in production. And I came back into the production office, and there's Jim at the fax machine, sending a fax, which he had never done before in his life. And I said, "What the heck are you doing?" He says, "I learned to fax while you were out. And now I can send my own faxes." And I was like, hallelujah. Had I known you were trainable, I would have done that a while ago. But he was really, I'll back up a little bit and say that when new people would come on, or in any time I ever, was helping new people learn what I wanted them to do in the production office or how our machine worked, I always said to people, everything starts with the script. What comes out of that production, that writer's office, what comes out of New York tells all of us what to do. We can't do anything until that happens. And Jim was really the guiding person that set everything up in Baltimore. He was he had so many habits. There was a question on your list that said, what was our guiding principle in the production office? And it was the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. And he had that hung up on the wall right outside of his office. And we lived by that. He set that kind of a tone. He would point at his watch all the time like this. He'd go to the set and be like, "Come on, let's keep it moving. Let's wrap it up." He had this philosophy that the only way this was going to survive, the only way the crew would survive, was if we could do 12-hour days. If we started doing 16, 18-hour days, it would kill us, which it would. And he wanted it to be something that was sustainable. And he helped create not only an incredible machine of a production, along with Tom and Barry and all the wisdom that they brought to Homicide, but he helped create the family of Homicide. And, it really did come from him, is the way I see it in a lot of ways. And he just had the greatest vision for how to run a strong production. And he and I were really suited for each other's personalities. I have something that I'm really proud to share. He said to me once, we would spend a lot of time in his office on late night shoots just talking. Or Jim Yoshimura, one of the writers, would be asleep on the couch because he famously needed naps. When he was stuck, he'd be over in the writer's office and he'd get stuck. And so he'd wander over to the production office and he'd come back into Jimmy's office and he'd lay down on Jimmy's couch and would fall asleep. Maybe sometimes he'd finish the cigarette and he'd fall asleep. And when he woke up, he'd stretch, he'd say a few words, and he'd go back and write the most amazing scene. He was like, "Oh, thanks, that nap really helped. I got it done," And, just those late night chats with Jimmy, hearing things about his life story, knowing him, his family. And one day he says to me, "I never had a friend who was a girl. until I met you. He goes, you're my first girl friend. And I was like, okay, thank you. So I felt really proud of that honor. I'm sure he's had more going forward, but we really had kind of a unique bond. And he ran things the way that really worked for me, that solution-oriented way of thinking. And I felt like we made a pretty good team. And when I left, I wasn't on the last 2 seasons. I had what I call homicide babies, which is not necessarily the most flattering term for my children, but and I did find the rigors of production a little too much with raising babies. And their dad at the time was also on the show, so we made some choices, but left the production in great hands with Greer and others that came with her. So,
yeah, I mean, Jim took an unusual path to production management. Very often you might have like maybe an AD who becomes a production manager, or accountants sometimes become production managers because there's so much money now that whatever. But he was a key grip, and he was a gifted, prolific key grip, and he basically was so good at what he did, and so I want to say I wasn't there, so I want to say observant, probably, that he understood everything that was going on. And so he worked with producers who could see that he was really the full package. So coming from a key grip to a production manager and later a producer and executive producer is, I mean, whenever people ask me about, my mentor or whatever, I talk about Jim and people say, oh my God, he was a grip and he became a producer. It's not the usual path for people who don't know
for sure.
the business. I mean, I have found, and something that he taught me, I guess, was, as I became like a production manager and then later a producer, if there's something going wrong on set and I go to set, typically you ask the AD and the DP, what's going on? Like, why are we having a bad day? What's, what has happened when I haven't been here? Can you fill me in? And you get different stories sometimes. And then I go to the key grip. And if you have a key grip that's worth his weight, Jimmy basically taught me that person can see, if they're really good at what they do, they can see everything. And so then I go the key grip and I'm like, what really happened? And then I get the story. And then, and so I try to find grips for my crews who can do that kind of thing, because Jimmy basically taught me a valuable lesson. But Jimmy, he had a loyalty that I've not really come across maybe since then. Like his sense of loyalty in my relationship with him was special, and he pushed me. I didn't see in me what he saw in me, which is pretty special when you have someone who you meet in your career who's like that. And he believed in me more than I believed in me. And he continued to teach me and sort of foster that learning, because I knew I could do things. And the only reason I am where I am is because of Jim.
Wow. Yeah, I think we've heard a couple stories of him maybe pushing people into a different position or a higher position because he saw something in them that they didn't perhaps see in themselves, which is interesting. Tracey, how about you?
I just adore Jimmy and the memory of him. He was an incredibly intimidating person. But as Greer said, and as Cathy has said, like, just to have his loyalty, which I think we all did. I think he looked after all of us in that office. He cared for all of us deeply, but you did learn, you learned so much just by his example, because he did have sort of high expectations that you cut to the chase and you say what you mean and you get it done, and that you're solutions oriented. And I think that teaches you a great deal if you are young and impressionable. I don't know. I'll forever love Jimmy.
Well, Kerry, maybe you can open up a bit with the whole troubleshooting we were talking about.
I mean, we had some incredible talent, the cameos that would come in, whether you're talking about Robin or Juliana Margulies or any one of these other people that was very, in a sense, up and coming. But the first episode, I think for me was like extremely challenging, but because it was the first episode, and that was when things had to start gelling real quick, and certainly as somebody had mentioned earlier, you had changes throughout the years of the show where various people came and went for whether they were wanted or not wanted. That was the general nature of it. But there were two episodes that come to mind, and one was Pat Moran calling me and saying, we're doing this gypsy decapitated thing, and I said yes, and she said, Barry wants you in the episode, and I was like, what? What do you mean? I had this like crazy colored like Jeep scarf. I had a big gothic jacket. I mean, Greer's known me since I've known Greer since he was knee high to a curb.
And that was the Gas Man episode.
Yeah, and I was like, the only thing I want to be on Homicide is a cadaver. And she goes, down the road, down the road, down the road. She goes, but go get bring your coat, bring your scarf, and be at set at such and such a time. So I ended up having to be in an episode, and that made me horribly uncomfortable. But you did what you were told. That was one thing.
Were you a gypsy? And you were a gypsy in the gas
Yeah,
man?
I was. Yeah, I was somewhere in the crowd.
Not know that?
I don't know if I ended up on the floor. I think I actually made the final cut. I haven't watched it back because I didn't want to see it if I wasn't it, because I remember the daily. Somebody showed me those. But anyway, and then I remember Bruce Paltrow directing an episode. Blythe was, coming down, and when Gwyneth was coming down, and this is like, and I got the call from him in LA, and he was like, I want to fly on the MGM Grand. And I was like, okay. That was $10,000 then.
Oh, God.
And I'm doing the travel, and I'm thinking, what the? I don't even think that's going to be remotely in the budget. But he ended up doing that and coming in, and then when he got into Baltimore, and he had to go back to New York to edit, and he was like, I want to fly. And I said, you're really better off taking the train, because I know where JFK is, I know where LaGuardia is, I knew where Penn was, and I knew where we were editing. So I was like, the train is really going to get you there. I can put you on the Acela, blah, 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 whatever. Not having it. Not having it. And he was screaming. I mean, he would get on the phone and scream at me. He was wild. And I ended up booking him out of BWI and getting him into, I can't remember, I think it was LaGuardia. And then he called cursing up a blue street as to the fact that it took 2 hours longer than it would have on the train. And I was just like,
exactly.
So what do you say? You just, you smile and you eat a lot of crow sometimes, but you do what you're told. And those were two things that stood out, as well as I remember knocking on the door and walking in and saying to the makeup artist, who shall remain nameless, and she wasn't on the show very long, I said, could you please hurry up with Juliana? I'm like, how do you have to make this woman beautiful? Like, this woman was like pristine. She looked good, like without any makeup on. She was beautiful. I don't know why I was on the set. I think they were shooting at the stage. And she turns around and goes, it takes Picasso a lot of time to work. And I said, that's not my question. When is the actor going to be ready? Because I'm getting a lot of heat and you're not telling me what I need to know. So those are the three things that stood out for me. The first season.
How old was Gwyneth Paltrow if she came down with them? Was she a child?
Yes, she was very young.
Oh, really? Huh? I wasn't there. Well, second season I was there, maybe.
Yeah.
I wanted to share a few things, just setting up in the pier. So when Kerry was the APOC there in the beginning, that first season, they had those offices in the hotel around the corner. And when I started that second season, Jimmy wanted to move them over to the pier. So just that whole process of setting up phone lines and everything. We had the beginning of every season, the pier would sit dormant for a long time. And I have great memories of at the beginning of the season, Ivan Fonseca, who started out in post-production and then was on set as an assistant director. He would come down from New York and he would bring some kind of a pellet gun or a, gun of some sort. And he and I would have breakfast at Jimmy's and then go over to the pier and shoot the pigeons that were in there before anybody else showed up and told us we couldn't shoot the pigeons. So, and Ivan, if you're listening, my memory serves me that I would shoot more than Ivan. I was a better shot. So he may claim different. I don't know. But yeah, so that was a very memorable thing that we would do to
and
get
you meaning
ready.
Inside the actual office area you were shooting?
Oh, throughout the stage.
Right.
We would go.
Oh, in the stage,
throughout the
upstairs
whole
in
stage,
the ballrooms
pigeons
and everywhere.
would have moved in.
Really? Wow. Okay.
And so we would go through the whole building and shoot pigeons that we could find. Because there was no other way to get them out. I mean, I hope that doesn't sound cruel to some people, but
understood.
There was no way to shoo them out, and they had to go. We couldn't have pigeons during filming. Bruce
Latecki would have enough sound problems without pigeons added into the
right.
They get very noisy.
Don't they? And they poop on you. Yeah. So if they sat in the lighting grid and pooped on people, and the set, that
pooping would be
either,
bad.
So.
Yes. Yeah. We had enough smelly
we
things
also
on the set.
I can't remember if it was season 3 or but that sticks in my mind. Jim had the idea to put an antenna on the roof of the building so that no matter where we were shooting in the city, we could reach them by walkie. So we had a base station that sat on my desk. And instead of, because you mentioned technology, cell phones were around, people had flip phones and things like that, but not smartphones. So when we wanted to reach people didn't even always have their phones on them. So walkie-talkies were the way. So getting quick answers through that rig on having the antenna on the building was a big improvement to our communication with the set. We repainted the windows on the piers, which was a big, that the pier itself was another character in the show.
Absolutely.
There were so many scenes in the garage, in the archway, on the stairs, on the ramp, on the roof. It really became a character. So we had to really care for that building because it was so featured. So repaving the roof or, taking that playground out and redoing the roof, putting that fire escape stairs on the back where there's a swimming pool now, repainting all those windows and glazing all the glass, just those kind of things were things done before the crew would come in as part of getting ready for the season. All right, and I have more, but I'll let Greer and Tracey chime in with some of your more memorable things that happened around Fells Point.
I do remember actually about the pier. Do you guys remember down by the copier?
Oh, the copier.
So the copier.
The water.
Yes, the copier was, there were some steps that went down. And the copier, that's where we kept the copier. And Cathy was really good about making us fan the paper and do all the things that you're supposed to do because of humidity and whatever. I didn't realize it until one day there was a little door right next to the copier. And we opened it and there was water. The actual Baltimore Harbor was probably 10 inches from our copier. I mean, now with what's happening in the climate, if that hadn't been fixed, it would have been a total disaster. But I do remember Jimmy. Do you remember Bob, the copier guy? Jimmy was like, "Oh, why did you just get it?" Because the copier always broke down. So, and I mean, it makes sense because their humidity was probably, also it's a copier, but he was like, "Why don't you just get a desk here? You're here every day. You should just get a desk here." But there was really no worse stress than trying to get the scripts out, especially script changes out, something last minute, and not having the copier work. Now people don't understand that. I'm in production offices all the time and they just send stuff email and, you get your watermark copy via Synchronize or whatever. But I'm the absolute panic when you put in and you get 2 copies of the script changes that are the next scene, and you cannot copy them and give them to people, was something that was like, you know, I mean, I can't.
A red ball.
It was a red ball. The stress is not. It would be like, okay, guys, go run down to the writer's office and see if their copier works. Whatever. It was like all that last minute kind of stuff that you had to figure out, like what the solution might be, because we didn't have, we didn't have the technology back then to do any of these things. Or like run upstairs and give it to the script supervisor. It's, 2 a.m. You can't wake somebody up to get into the writer's office. Okay, we'll give it to the script supervisor and have them go through all the change. It was wild. But the copier for me was like the biggest ball of stress. If I have stress work dreams, there's usually a copier involved in it.
And people would literally be standing there staring at whoever was at the copier, waiting ever so patiently for whatever it was you were trying to copy. Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of like hazing. It was kind of like the copier was like, if you can figure this out, then you will succeed.
You had to go through, right?
You'll be okay.
The hardest steel goes through the hottest flame, right? But it was the copier on this show.
Mm-hmm. And now it's like people, I feel like saying to the kids in the production office now, I had to walk to school with no shoes on.
In the snow.
In the snow.
Backwards.
Tracy, do you remember FedExing scripts out? That was such a task. It was like copying it all, counting all the pages with those rubber fingers that were so disgusting.
Yes.
Counting all the pages, putting the names on top of them, getting the FedExes prepared, making sure that the FedEx person, putting the Brads, make sure the FedEx person got there, being charming enough to make the FedEx person wait, or else you weren't going to get it out in priority overnight. Like
you'd have to drive it to the airport. Yeah.
Exactly, to drive it to the airport. Someone go get them snacks. Go, here's craft service. Would you like a Dorito? But all those things that just now it's like the push of a button.
Greer and I spent a lot of time at the copier together, and that's how I got my nickname from Pat Moran. She called me Mouse because we would gossip like little mice as we were trying to troubleshoot the copier.
Counting our pages. So Tracy is affectionately termed Mousy.
How do that people get their call sheets now? Do they just get them? Do they get texted to them? Do they get emailed to them? What is there such a thing as a call sheet anymore? I don't even know.
The way we do it, and it really, we were still doing a lot of hard copies before COVID. Sadly, we were. But now after COVID, most of the studios have really upgraded their digital platforms. So we, on the last few shows, used Synchronize, and you literally, for each document you have, you put in the distribution list. And then you basically upload whatever document it is to that list, and it sends it out watermarked to everyone who has that list. So we do it with scripts too. There are certain people who want their scripts printed out. They have they either make notes on them, or maybe there's a digital thing now called scriptation that some people use, and you can make the notes on it. But some people prefer the sort of the physical script still. But it's so easy. You just once you get those lists built, you are golden, and someone could have. I have whole shows on my desktop now.
Wow. So, sorry, Tracy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say
Cathy.
the sides were another thing. Like as soon as you finished the script, then it was to making the sides that went with each day's filming, which are mini pages that Tracy could tell you more about probably. That everybody on set wanted their sides, and including the cast, to know exactly where we were. So,
and then the day after the script comes out, then the changes come out, and maybe multiple changes that week, right? So it just sort of never ended.
It was a great system, though. It came out on a different color of paper, depending on which version it was. So, blues were the second revision. You usually got a full script on blue. But then the next ones would be pinks and then yellows. And
Pink pages, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of industry standard, the progression of the colors. Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
Made a ton of sense.
It's interesting. Tom, the way it was such a great place to learn because Tom in the writer's office was so buttoned up. It was so, the scripts were really vetted and gone through, and there were no spelling errors. There were no, I've worked in places since, and a lot of them have been fantastic, but certain ones, I would look at them and be like, Tom would never let a script go out like that. It was just, it really was, as Cathy was saying, everything began with the script, but the focus and the intention put into making sure that the script was it was respected from the moment you received it, because it was respected in its conception. And so it's really, you talk about like sort of the top down. It really was, there was such a high standard for the scripts that really everything down had to kind of be of that standard. It was just, that's how I've always felt on that show, and that show being really the first show that I was ever involved in as a real job. It really helped me to learn the right way.
And you're spot on. That was definitely everything that came from, but Barry, Tom, right from the top, was done to the utmost professionalism. And that set the tone for the whole show. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Chris, I want to jump to the episodes that Cathy mentioned in her email when I said, do you guys have any specific memories of specific episodes we could look at beforehand? And Cathy, you mentioned 2, which I was so glad I rewatched them last night. Well, it was 3, because it was Hostage Part 1 and 2, which had an enormous logistical challenge with gigantic amounts of extras, SWAT team, helicopters, news crews, a freaking Vietnamese potbelly pig. You could not ask for anything. Fire, gunfire. Everything. Children being shot. It's just huge logistics.
Andre's return.
Andre's first episode back from his stroke. And then the other one was, which it took me a while to figure out, was the one that happened during the 1996 blizzard, which happened during January 5th,
1996. I think
1996, 6th to 9th, 22 and a half inches in Baltimore, 30 inches in Carroll County. My house, we had about 2 feet. But that the production was shut down, but also the logistics of trying to get people into town before the snowstorm, and you didn't always have everybody in town before the snowstorm. And then if you watch that episode, which was the stakeout episode, you can see the exteriors where there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, and they go into Leakin Park and having to walk through 2 feet of snow where all these bodies were buried. Talk about that if all 3 of you have any memories of those particular episodes, because I would tell people watch Hostage 1 and 2 for the logistics, but also Stakeout takes place mostly indoors and is one of the most beautiful homicide-y episodes.
One of my favorite.
Where every detective is in there during the stakeout, watching the house next door and having these very personal conversations with each other. I think you said, Chris, John McNaughton directed it. Beautiful close-ups, beautiful interior monologues. Well, not interior monologues, but people talking about very personal things. And I think the best scene between Andre and Yaphet in all 7 seasons is in that episode, in the stakeout episode. So anyway, go ahead if you guys have any episode memories of those 2 or other episodes that were particularly challenging or stuck in your heads.
Yeah, and that the 2-parter really came to mind first for me because of everything that you just said, and it was the season opener. So we were, it'd come on I'd come on probably at least 2 months before. So we're opening the pier back up, shooing the pigeons out,
or shooting them,
figuring out what repairs
shooting
need to
the pigeons out.
Shooing, I changed it to. what repairs needed to be done, what things had happened over the months where we had left it sit there empty. So we're working on all that and prepping that really big episode. And Shelley Ziegler, I think, was the first AD on that one. And she has gone on to so many great things in her career. But she really wrangled that. We had extra meetings that we would set up for people to discuss the logistics, get department heads there. That helicopter is Jim had a friend in New York who had a helicopter business, camera helicopter business. And so we booked him right away, and he was coming down with a crew, and he'd fly down that morning, and we had it all planned out. He needed to, be near set around a certain time. He called that morning of our first day of filming, and he said to me, how are you? I said, good. How are you? And it's probably 5 a.m. And he said, good, except my father-in-law died last night, so I won't be coming today. And I remember saying, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. So you're not coming? And he said, no, I'm not coming. And I said, is someone else going to bring the helicopter with the camera mount and the operator and everything? He says, no, my helicopter doesn't leave without me, so we're not coming. And that was a big challenge for me, because I remember going over to Jim and saying, hey.
That actually is.
It was a very production moment, and it's very ingrained in my brain. I remember saying to Jim, hey, so the helicopter guy's not coming. And he goes, oh, what happened? His father-in-law died and he's not coming. And he said, okay, can you get me another helicopter? And, you never say no. Someone else said that earlier. You just never say no. And I said, let me work on that. And I made some calls. I found a helicopter guy at Martin State Airport that happened to have nothing to do that day. He'd never done anything like this before, but I told him I had the most confidence in him and that he would get a lot of direction once he got there. And I had some help with some camera people, Susan, maybe even you, and found a camera mount in DC for the copter, and I put a PA on the road. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, but I was like, there is not a minute to waste. You have gas in your car. It was like, you need to go here, get this, drive it to Martin State Airport. There's going to be a camera person there waiting for you. Call me if anything happens. And so, we got the helicopter there, and it just created a lot of extra challenges. And like I said, and being that season opener, and the for the cast, having Andre come back, his character come back after the stroke, and just really shifted the tone of the show. It really changed. That season was a big shift in how the squad room detectives interacted with each other and were portrayed. So but we were a pretty successful show at that point. So it was what needed to happen to keep the show alive. It was great. It was awesome. So,
and that was season 5, and then the Stakeout was season 4. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that. How? I mean, obviously, if I had 2 feet of snow at my house and I couldn't get out my front door, I wasn't coming to work. So I can't remember, was it a day or 2 we were down? And what kind of problems did that make, not just for getting the actors there, but for getting anybody there and for shooting anything, anywhere that
digging
week.
out so we could put the trucks on the road. And was the city digging out enough to, even if we could get them dug out at the pier, could they drive down the street at all? And as I remember it, when we wrapped on Friday, we knew it was going to snow, and maybe it even started snowing Friday night, but no one knew how much it was going to snow. The forecast was not accurate. And I remember Jimmy and Tom, everyone saying, don't go far, but like with the car story, actors went to New York and Toronto and trying to get them back. The most we knew we couldn't film out in the community on set, or even get to that house. But we did have some scenes in the squad room, and we thought, okay, so for Monday, if we could just go to cover and shoot in the squad room, who can we get? How can they give the lines to someone, whoever's in town? How could they rearrange the script? So they're working furiously to try to adjust the script to give us something to shoot on Monday. And while we're working furiously to try to get actors into town. And Yaphet was a champion. He was in Toronto. He wasn't needed, for a couple of days. He thought he would be fine. And Jimmy said to me, tell him he has to get here. And Yaphet took it to heart, and he got in a little minivan with his assistant, who I think at the time was a girl named Jennifer. And they started driving in this blizzard on Sunday morning. And all day Sunday, they kept calling me and checking in. Okay, we made it 20 miles or something, and the roads are somewhat plowed. And they kept driving, and I kept calling Jim and calling Tom. They're trying to get here, keep him going. Don't let him stop. And I didn't feel good about that. I was like, I don't know if this is safe. And finally, at somewhere like 5 or 6 in the afternoon or the early evening, they were like, we can't go anymore. We made it to Pittsburgh, but there's just no way. No one else could get on a train. All the trains had shut down. And they finally called it and said, we have to, file an insurance claim that we can't film because of the weather. And I think it was 2 days that we were down. Susan, is my memory, like that Monday and Tuesday. And
was that really, in the script, it was Leakin Park. Was that really Leakin Park where we shot, where the bodies were buried? That was taken from a similar story that had actually happened years ago with young boys. And I can't remember if that was actually Leakin Park or we tried for someplace closer because of the weather, like, the edge of Patterson Park or something. I don't really know. Yeah. And then the house, and I think the house was supposed to be Roland Park, but I'm not sure where the actual house was. But yeah, it's obvious that the scene where they get to quote unquote Leakin Park and they get out of the squad cars and start walking down the hills, and Max has the camera on his shoulder and he falls in the snow at least twice, trying to get down the hill and trying to just walk in this 2 feet of snow because he was a little guy and the snow was like up to his knees. So you could really see what the logistical problems were. It wasn't just those people walking down the hill. It was a whole like caravan of trucks, 5-ton trucks that had to get there, right? And they get the cameras out in the snow, and it's just so interesting. And I don't have a serious memory of that, which is really awful.
I think it happened another time. I think that there was a time that we had a bad snow the day we were all supposed to come back from Christmas break.
Oh.
And there was no way to know what was going to happen. And I do remember my brother had a Bronco. I remember getting to the pier in a Bronco because for some reason, it felt like remote work. Like, we all had phones in our homes and we all had crew lists. Like, I don't know why we had to go to the office, but it just felt like you had to be there.
There's no such thing as a remote day.
No,
exactly.
No. There's no like, I can work from home. I have a computer and a phone.
Exactly.
No, that's
like,
not
I don't
happening.
have any idea like why. And then I remember getting there, and in the show, they used to have the red balls. Like, they used to be like, it's a red ball. Like, the script would always be like, and a massive red ball's in the squad room. And I felt like the production office was a red ball for as many people as we had there. Because I feel like people who lived in Fells Point just came in, no matter what department you were in, and just were like making calls. And on that particular snow day, I feel like Jimmy was bound and determined to shoot something. And we got people skiing cross country on Thames Street.
Yes, and there's a
which
shot.
ended up in the show,
which ended up in the Stakeout episode, actually. And there may be used in another one, but it definitely was used in the Stakeout episode.
Yeah,
that's funny.
And I remember like it was life imitating art. Like, I remember at one point, whatever this one snowstorm was that we were all like literally in the pier like a red ball. Like, with like, just dialing people's numbers. And I think only half of us maybe had even started to have cell phones, or at that point, I think Jimmy had a Nextel.
The box.
Yeah.
Those big
and we
things,
had like an alphanumeric pager for Jimmy where we used next to the fax machine. Yeah. Again, walking to school without shoes on is basically, I feel like, how we did this.
I have a memory, and I thought it was the Gas Man episode, but when I looked up, that was aired in May, so probably shot in March, and maybe it was a late snowstorm. I have this memory. It was either the Gas Man or another episode where we were shooting at that lighthouse that was put on Pier 4, Pier 5, the big red one.
The red one, yeah.
Yeah. And it started snowing that was the last scene we were doing that day. It started snowing very lightly. And by the time we wrapped and got on the road, I almost did not get home. The snow was so bad. Now, and that may have been one of those late winter or early spring snowfalls where it melted the next day or something, but it wasn't the blizzard one, which was surprising when I looked it up. So I don't know what that was.
Back when it snowed.
Yeah, back when it used to snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we just have
funny
horrible
enough,
heat waves and horrible rain, and tornadoes are on the way now too. Right,
Cathy, I remember the day that you called in sick. I remember,
so you must have trained him how to use the fax machine.
Oh, I don't know. But I remember Cathy calling in sick, and I sat at this desk that had the motherboard phone, which was, and I remember picking the phone, and I remember hearing Cathy's like little voice on the other side. And you were like, in an unprecedented move, I'm going to be calling out sick today. And I was like, oh my God, Cathy is not coming in. I was like, what are we going to, like, all of these thoughts are racing through my head. And then I remember it was like a second day, and I was like, she must be dead. Like, she must be like she'd never called in sick. But I don't remember Jim faxing, but I do remember you calling in sick, and what a big, big deal that was.
That's funny. Yeah. Any Tracey for you? Any memories of any specific episodes or specifically challenging? And then I'm going to ask about actors. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So I just think on topic of these episodes we were talking about, like, I remember getting a call at home from Cathy during the blizzard saying, "We're open, come in." And I was like, okay. Any idea how I might? You were like, find a crew list, start calling people close to you. I was like, okay, yes, ma'am. And I wound up coming down. My father had like a 4-wheel drive truck. He had to get me out of Catonsville and get me down there, which was fantastic. But I hadn't thought ahead because, I was like 20-something. I didn't bring a change of clothes or anything. And we were sort of stranded there for a few days because of how bad that blizzard was. And Greer, thank goodness, put me up. So I think I wound up getting a ride back to Greer's house in the Bronco, maybe.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was a red ball in that office, and we were just trying to pull everything together that we could. I think at some point we did at least have somebody doing the board in the.
We did the board,
like filming the board. Yeah. On the
and
stage.
I think, we had a little camera crew filming some snow stuff, like the cross-country skier and things like that. That might have been on Wednesday what we got done or something.
We might have been thrilled if Jimmy's opened so we could get some coffee and food. I don't know. Like,
I think the grind was always open. So.
Probably. It all came together.
The good thing about Fells Point, especially at that time, was like somebody lived down there. I mean, at that point, I think everybody lived down there. So at least people from the grind had people who lived down there and could get you in for a cup of coffee.
Greer, just a shout out, your brother and his Bronco. Greer's brother was Brooke Yaton, who was also on the show as a property manager, prop manager. Go ahead. Sorry, Cathy.
I was going to say I lived in the neighborhood and I could walk to the pier. But one of my neighbors shoveled my car out, which was a huge labor of love. And when I came home, I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you, but I don't need it." So but it was good to have it shoveled out. Yeah,
that's a very sweet.
So you could put the Baltimore thing of putting a lawn chair in it. If you moved, yeah.
Susan, the other memory I have about the hostage episodes was that I think it was the hiatus just prior to that Yash hired me to do some research on stroke rehabilitation.
I wondered about that when I was watching those episodes. Who did that research? Wow.
I had
Okay, go ahead.
so much fun doing that. And I don't think I even had a computer at home at the time. I don't think I had a computer in my apartment. I certainly wasn't using the internet. And I think I was like literally going to libraries and doing, book research. I was calling doctors. I had an interview with a doctor at a hospital in Baltimore, and somebody in the administration there caught wind and showed up at the interview. So I was asking medical questions, and this person wanted to tell me how they would love to be the location for it and all of this. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir, but I have no control over that. And I will tell you, I'm happy to pass that information along to the people who would have control over that. But you really don't want it. It's such a hassle. You can't imagine.
You don't want us to destroy a wing of your hospital."
That's right. That's right. So I don't know. That was a really wonderful experience to get to do that. And then to just get to see it sort of represented, the flashes of it through a few episodes. It was really fun. And, I had a great deal of fondness for Yash. Anyway, it was a great experience.
Yeah, that's really good to know, because I had that question when I was watching it, because there's some very super specific things that Andre did as a recovering stroke victim. And I thought, I did, like I just said, who did that research, where he's calling the coffee the bagel, or specifically the sort of stilted way he walked and the things that he could remember and the things that he couldn't remember. That's really interesting. Did you keep any of those notes or recordings or interviews from then?
I don't know if I have copies of any of it, because I think it's literally handwritten notes that I just handed over to Yash, like loose leaf paper. Yeah.
I was for me, one of the most sort of fun things that I got to do as production secretary, I think, was I had to read the mail. I mean, that wasn't the most fun thing, but a lot of them were requests from different charities throughout Baltimore. And, Jimmy and Cathy were pretty dedicated to, we're shooting in this community. This community, Baltimore City is doing us a service, and we need to do that back. And I got to do so many great things, like, if the producers approved it, because we would sort of have a bit of an approval process. I mean, it wasn't like
a given.
It wasn't a given, and it wasn't like a crazy process, but it was just like, make sure it's a legitimate sort of thing. And we got to sign scripts, and we had people go, like Clark went and would talk to school children. And, the actors were really gracious with their time, especially as it came to, as they became members of the community over the course of all of the years. And so it would be special events, or Jimmy would he'd talk to the studio, and he'd have events at the stage, for different charities. And I would give tours of the stage to different, people, not just charities. I mean, sometimes it would be to lawmakers and stuff, I think, if they were trying to get certain things.
Right.
But that, for me, that was like an unexpected part of the job. Like, Tracy's saying, like, I had to do something that you wouldn't normally think of in a typical production office, So for me, and also being from Baltimore and knowing the need in Baltimore, especially in the 90s, I think that was a rough time. It was amazing. It was like an amazing gift to be able to do that. And as production has left the city, I feel kind of lament the situation that maybe there are kids now who are coming up in schools who might want to be an actor and don't have access to something like that. I mean, it was pretty unique and special, but it was something that they had access to because everybody on the show really being of the same mind to give back as much as they could.
And on that same vein of that community commitment, and in 1996, the Baltimore Sun named Homicide: Life on the Streets as the Marylander of the Year. We received that award because we were prolific in the community. We, like you say, lived and worked there. Everyone loved the show. Everyone really embraced filming. If you were filming in a neighborhood, they were happy to have you. And that was partly the way that we interacted with them. And then the show itself was so well loved that they were thrilled to have us there. So in almost all cases.
I didn't remember that. Wow.
I've got a random question. I have a vague memory from the reunion. There's a photograph of obviously everybody in front of the building that we were using as our reference for the new one. And there was a guy on a bicycle. What was his name? Because he was part of production life too. Could you tell us a little bit about him?
Yes.
Bicycle Bruce was his name. I'm sure he had a last name, but I don't know what it was.
I don't think anybody knew.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
He was a fella in the community that would ride his bicycle around, and he made he had a little apartment over near the line of the city and the county towards Dundalk. And he would pick up scrap metal and change it at the scrapyard for some change. I learned later he also had, some community, some SSI benefits or something that helped him pay his rent and things like that. But the production sort of adopted him because he kept showing up, Some people didn't like him, but most people just embraced him. He was probably a little intellectually limited, and he would cough a lot. He's had diabetes. He would say, "You can't catch this from me." It's not a sickness. Just a really sweet man. The biggest heart. He tried to help out when he could, and or would just chat with people. And when Clark was got his opportunity to direct an episode of Homicide, it was his first chance at directing, and he was a little bit nervous, but he was especially kind to Bicycle Bruce, and he signed Bruce up to be his assistant. And all he needed to do was hold his notebook and kind of be right there, in Video Village or near this, at the edge of the set, if Clark needed him, and helped him feel more part of the crew. And the poor fella, he somehow misplaced that very important materials of Clark's, and it became a red ball. And everyone was looking for this, and he was sent off the set, and he came in the production office, and he was just sobbing. He was so brokenhearted that he had let Clark down, and and he still came around after that, and ended up in our crew photo that you saw.
Were the papers ever
just
found?
Was always there. So yeah.
Was the notebook ever found?
It was found. I think it maybe was even the next day. So
gosh.
It was hard for Clark because that was all of his notes, all of his thoughts. This was his first opportunity. And of course, he's gone on to be an incredible director. But the poor fella did have quite a breakdown that day. So,
was it in Clark's episode where Bicycle Bruce had a cameo? He drives through on his bike, and I believe, if my memory serves, on one of the the deck outside of Henderson's Wharf, rides by on the bicycle. Because I keep rewatching episodes all the time, and I don't remember which one it was, but I was like, "Oh, there's Bicycle Bruce. He just went by."
I know it was in an episode just like you're describing, but I can't remember which one it was. Yeah.
He would show up even on night shoots. I mean, he was almost always there. Didn't matter what time of the day. Like, we could be as far away from Dundalk in the city as you could imagine, and he would ride his bike there. We're all the way across town to be on the set with us. So yeah, that's funny. That was a good random question.
I specialize in that.
Okay, we want some troubleshooting with actors. Do we have any good actor stories? And they don't have to be mean stories. They could be fun actor stories.
Greer might have a great one about trying to get an actor from Penn Station to set when there could be a rendezvous with a certain girlfriend who was in town for a film shoot. Do you remember
I don't
that, Greer?
remember that.
Ooh, intrigue.
I don't remember
Tracy, do you remember
that.
the
She's
story?
blocked it out, Tracy.
I do remember
and of
because
course
Greer
it's
was
like-
so on top of it. She predicted what was going to happen, and she was right.
Oh,
So
wow.
you had to send Eddie to Penn Station to go whisk. I'm going to say names, but you'll
That's
blank
fine,
them
because
out
we
if
can
you
always
want to,
blank them
right?
out. Yeah. Or not.
To grab Benjamin Bratt. And Julia Roberts was in town.
Oh, and the
on her movie
crossover
shoot.
episodes.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. And I think you had gotten word. That maybe from the movie set that Julia had gotten some time off in the day at the right moment to whisk over to Penn Station and try to whisk him away in her limo or in her driver's car. And you were like, Eddie, do not let him go. And Eddie winds up coming back empty-handed, and he's like, Greer, I tried my best. It was just
What
the
was Julia
cutest.
Roberts in town for?
Runaway
Was that-
Bride.
Mhm.
Oh, I thought that was much earlier. Okay, yeah, Runaway Bride, sure.
Runaway Bride, yeah. Oh my God, that's hilarious. I love how I thought Ed could somehow manage Benjamin Bratt from Julia Roberts. I mean, honestly, that's like the kind of thing like, get it? Can you get us a helicopter? It's like, okay. I'm sure he tried. Yeah, I'm sure he tried, but
So cute.
I totally forgot that. I do remember though those crossover episodes, and those were fun. Those were good episodes.
Yeah, those were extra logistics as well.
I bet.
Yeah, I
Trying to
used
work all
I
that
used to run the guns. Do you remember? I would have to run the props between New York and Jimmy was so sweet because my boyfriend lived in New York. It was my first season. It was before Jonah moved, and he lived in New York, and we had, prop guns. I mean, they weren't real, but it wasn't something you could ship. The props we had such a tight window of like sending our actor and getting them back to shoot and all those things that Jimmy was like, well, you can go up and you can stay the night. They'll shoot. You can go to the set of Law and Order, then pick them up and then come bring them back on Amtrak with, and my brother's props. So, and so we could have them in time for our shoot.
Prior to metal detectors on trains. I mean,
I don't even know if they were metal. You know what I mean? But they look like guns.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, sure.
People have for sure. And I just remember later thinking like, and this is years later, because I feel like so much has happened in the world since then. You just walked onto an airplane. You just,
absolutely.
all the kinds of things. But you smoked on the Amtrak train. It was a different time. But I remember later thinking like, oh, wow, that could have been like a really bad episode of like, like Three's Company when there's always like some sort of misunderstanding that never gets resolved. I'm like, I could have really had some sort of really bad misunderstanding with that. But
gosh. Yeah. And you talk about logistics with the crossovers. I saw, and I hope I didn't mention this I probably did in another episode, where I saw a picture of myself, my picture collection of me with the Panaflex on my knee. And I'm like, what the heck? What was that for? And then I finally realized it was for the crossover episode. So the stuff that we shot here for Law and Order was shot on 35. But I have no recollection. It's probably because Dave did it all. Dave was, the tech guru. We would have had to get the Panaflex from somewhere else. So, there weren't any Panaflexes in town. So it probably came from New York.
Yeah, I'm sure we shipped it in from somewhere.
Yeah. Interesting.
I have a great memory of Reed. We were talking earlier, it goes back to the copier. And he was one of those people that the script would come over and department heads are all getting alerted. All right, we have the script. It's on the machine. And Reed had come to the show not with the original cast. So he came with kind of his boyish enthusiasm for everything he does. And he was so eager to fit in and do well that he would wait for the script. And the minute because they're sitting there assigning the script as they go down the list. He'd take his script and he wouldn't even leave. He would just sit right on the steps that led down to the almost submerged copy machine. And he would start reading it right there. And then he'd pick up that copy machine phone and call his voice coach or his, whoever he worked with to work through the script. And they would start their conversation about his scenes right there. And he could be sitting on those stairs for like an hour or two, oblivious to everything that was going on around him, just diving into his role. So it was
interesting.
He was just our Reed on the stairs. So
with wet feet. No, just kidding.
Those stairs, actually, I mean, thinking about how the production office could have been its own show, those stairs, a lot happened on those stairs. I mean, there was definitely like meeting of the minds, a lot of arguments, meeting of the minds, all kinds of stuff, big decisions made. Because also the refrigerator was right above the stairs. So, But that phone, food, exactly. But that phone was, I remember Alan Taylor once coming out and him saying, like, he came over and he was just so polite. And he was like, because we're in an old pier. And he was like, I just wanted to let you know there's a mouse on the craft service table.
Of course there is.
And he was just like so nice about it. He's like, I think there might be something wrong with it because it's not afraid of me. So I think it might move to me when I'm like, oh God, we poisoned a mouse that's like now all over the food. And, like I was like panic stricken and he was just like so nice about it. But I mean, it was, we're lucky it wasn't, we're on the wharf, basically. We're lucky
bubonic
it wasn't.
plague wasn't transferred.
It wasn't
in the making of this show.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, dump everything, get the bleach out, and let's start over again. But
he probably wasn't afraid of him because, he probably like knew us all.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't send you out your
He
gun,
was-
Cathy, did they?
Right. Get Cathy. She's a good shot.
No. We only shot when no one was around.
It might have lent itself to the naming of Tracey, her nickname, because I think that's
mouse. There you go.
I think the mice were like that section of our office more than any other sections.
Now, was this the craft service table for the crew, or did you have a separate one in the production office?
No, we had a little one in the production office.
Oh, you did?
Okay. Yeah. It was like
because
our
we'd have the
central
first
meeting.
AD and the director in there prepping too, and
Right.
always making sure they had access.
Any other good actor stories? I want to hear a good actor story. Come on, somebody fess up.
I have a fun one about Kyle and Andre, which is sweet and of a time, I should say. But they were up just off the stage waiting to get called in for a scene. And I needed to run a message up from the production office to somebody on stage. And I had the cutest pair of like retro plaid pants on that I had just gotten. I was so excited about them. And I walked past them and Kyle, who was being kind, says, "Hey, nice pants." And I turn around and I shoot him a look and Andre says, "Tracey, I got this." "Thank you very much." And I went on. And so later he came downstairs and saw me. I was typing something up at the, I guess an IBM typewriter. And he says, Andre says, "Tracey, I just want you to know that this is what I told Kyle about his comment and your pants." And he went on for like this beautiful monologue that was like so eloquent, more than I ever could have said from a feminist point of view. But he nailed it. And I was so grateful to him. But it was all in good fun anyway. It was very sweet.
I won't name both actors, but there was a similar sort of Andre. I mean, Andre was... They're all special, but Andre was also very special. And he... there was one day on set, and I happened to be up on stage. I don't know why. I mean, that was kind of the great part about being in the office, but having the studio right there was that, it's like go up and take a message, or, go stay for a while. Or if you wrapped early, like if my shift ended, I could go up and watch filming or whatever. It was right there. It was very accessible. But there was an actor, someone was singing on the set. I don't know who it was. It was maybe a couple of people together. And there was an actor who was having difficulty with their lines in a scene with Andre, and the actor got a little sort of huffy and just was like, can we stop singing? Can we have quiet on the set? Can we... And Andre walked over to him quietly, but I just happened to be there, and said, don't do that. He said, I understand, and we can work it out, and we can talk to the director, and we can, I'll help you with your lines. We can go over it. But these people spend so much more. We're an ensemble. We only work part of the time. These people spend so much time here, and they give so much of their lives to here, that if this is the way that they're having fun and they're getting through the day and they have these relationships, we have to let that happen, and we'll do our work together. And sort of took him over and just went through the lines and he really got it. He understood, he saw it. Like, people were, by a lot of the actors were seen, but Andre really saw people. You know?
He was brilliant in so many ways.
Yeah, in such a special way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think all the cast that I remember always interacted not always, because people get tense, but generally really interacted like we were all together, like with the crew, interacted with the crew. Like there wasn't sort of a hierarchy between the crew and the actors. But I remember really appreciating when Andre accepted the Emmy Award that year, and he held it up and he said, "This is for you, Baltimore." And I knew he meant us. And not many people, even I used to yell at the screen when directors of photography would win an Academy Award and get up there and not thank their crew. It's like, dude, like, you're only up there because somebody kept that in focus, right? So for him to recognize us, really was, it meant I teared up. I just remember
I cried.
Meant a lot.
I cried. And I remember because he'd left the show already. So he won this season, like it fell in the calendar year after he'd already left, but it was for the season prior. And he did thank specific departments. He thanked the lovely ladies of the production office.
Oh, yay.
And he thanked different, whatever. And then basically he, at the end, said the city of Baltimore. And that meant really, I started crying. It really meant a lot.
Yeah.
All the actors were almost all very gracious. To all production office crew. It was a family. We had that family feeling, it just was that way. When Ned Beatty came to town, I know some of your shows that I've listened to, I've heard mention about his freak out where he ripped the windshield wiper off the car and was yelling at the director and things like that on Thames Street. And he had come to that season not in a good frame of mind. And his first wrath before the one on the set got directed at me because he arrived. I had arranged his travel to the airport and a car to pick him up. And he arrived at the airport and he couldn't connect with the driver. The driver just held up a sign at that time. And I have the driver on the phone. He's waiting right there. He's looking for Ned. Ned can't see him. And he is screaming bloody murder at me, how incompetent I am, how stupid I am. I can't get him a car and things like that. And hung up on me. I eventually got in a cab. And to cut to the chase, we eventually became friends and things were fine. But at that time, I called Jim and Tom and was upset and said, explained what just happened, that Ned didn't connect with the driver and he's very mad. And they were both so mad at him for the way he spoke to me. And Greer mentioned this before about how protective Jimmy was of his people. And they both said, you don't ever have to speak to him again. He is never allowed to come in the production office. And if you're on set and he tries to talk to you, you don't have to say a word to him. He is never allowed to speak to you again. And that went on for a couple of episodes. And he had a wonderful wife, Winnie, I think her name was. I can't remember, but she brought him a lot of calm, and he eventually brought me candy and flowers and a huge apology for his behavior, and we were good to go from there. But
wow, that's great.
It was a shocking moment to be screamed at. Although I've been screamed at a lot by actors, but
me too.
They sometimes well within their rights. So another thing I remembered about Melissa Leo. Her interview with you guys was so interesting, by the way. She was such a wonderful person. And Susan, I remember always feeling so connected to you because women were the minority. There were a lot of strong women on Homicide, and there was a really great atmosphere. I've had Me Too moments in my film production career, but none of them happened on Homicide. That was, a very respectful place. And Melissa, in her she lived a few blocks from the stage. And in her free time, I think on at least one occasion, her and the guy she was seeing at the time brought their mountain climbing gear over to the stage, and they climbed the pier on the outside.
Really?
They set their ropes and everything, and they belayed each other up the building. And people would stand and watch them and everything. I don't think people realized it was Melissa Leo that was climbing the pier, but she was just such a vibrant, outdoorsy kind of woman. And that was just a fun memory outside of shooting that I always have.
That's a great story.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's how I think the electrics would change the lights on the City Pier building. They would belay down to it. Do you remember
On the
that?
back?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Where it says Broadway, you mean?
Yeah,
On the
Broadway
back?
Pier.
Yeah. Rodney let me do it once, but he had to hold me up, and he got me back down. He goes, I had no idea how heavy you
let
are.
Rodney hold you? You let Rodney hold you on a rope hanging over the side of a building? Just kidding, Rodney.
It's so funny because when Cathy was talking about getting back to the offices and taking care of everything, I thought about Rodney, and I thought, gosh, it's so funny that like his job, he was in charge of the sign and making sure the sign stayed lit. Like, and then you have that story, all those bulbs,
and they were. So funny.
They're always blowing out.
Yeah.
Gosh.
That was kind of something later that would make me so sad when I would come back, to Baltimore, to Fells Point, when we weren't in the pier, and the pier wasn't obviously the Pendry at that point, was seeing the back, like the sign, like not lit properly. I was like, oh, it was like really. So I know Jimmy was like a stickler, wanting it to remain lit and looking, as
Top
beautiful
shelf,
as it could be, and it's beautiful. So I appreciated the difference. I mean, it really was a sad looking little sign without being lit up.
I remember going by in those, decades after we left and before the Pendry redid it, and just sort of shaking my head and going, God, why are you letting that place fall apart? So it is pretty beautiful now. And I have a great shot of Chris on the pier next to it, with the Broadway sign behind, the whole building behind him, and the Broadway sign lit behind him. So yeah, it is really nice to see that again.
It's such a historic building. I was always struck by was different people in the community of like Fells Point, but also whatever, saying what it meant to them when they were growing up. Oh, I went for whatever. I played basketball. My mother's father actually had a big band. It was called the Johnny Moran Band, and he used to play at the City Pier. So it's an historic building, and I know that the maintenance and upkeep was so expensive that I think that we're all just very lucky that someone who had sort of big pockets was able to come in and restore it in really, I think, a gentle, kind way. They didn't really strip it of a lot of its charm and history.
At least you can kind of go in as well, because if it were private apartments, you wouldn't be able to go in.
Right,
and see the former squad room back to being a ballroom. Yeah, and that they restored the pilings, because the way the divers described it as that what the pier was sitting on had kind of gotten whittled down to toothpicks over time, and so restoring the base of the pier in the water, I think, was really key for those big pockets as well. So
wow, that must have been when they found the buried cannon. There's a couple cannon on display at the Pendry that they found when they were under there.
So you were about to say buried treasure that paid for it, but
buried treasure, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Maybe thoughts on the restoration?
I think the restoration for me was, I watched them on Peacock. I didn't watch all of them, but I watched some of my, favorites. And I think that for years, people have asked me what I did before, like, how did you start? How did you whatever? And Homicide is obviously my foundation, really. But people couldn't access it. People couldn't, I think, like, maybe on YouTube, you could kind of find it or skirt it. But as much as, like, if like Cathy was saying, finding people from the reunion, like, I'm like a dog with a bone. If I'm looking for something, like, I'm just like, I've got to find it. I've got to keep finding it. I've got to keep finding it. And there was really no easy way for me. I had DVDs. And my assistant on the last job I was on, she was like, oh, I really would like to watch, Homicide. And I said, well, I have a DVD, but the box set. And she's like, I don't have a DVD player, of course, because she's a millennial. So
nobody does.
I know. Right. I mean, I was like, whatever. So I was like, ugh. So I actually, as our wrap gift, I bought her a DVD player to watch it at the time. And now, I mean, whatever. They're so cheap now. They're whatever. So that she could watch it. And then it finally came out on Peacock. And so it was a blessing. I mean, I know that it's missing certain songs. And so for me, I felt like, at the reunion we had, come here, pup. At the reunion we had a lot of those tapes, or we had playlists, and they got a lot of the music, not a lot of the music, but some of the music from the cassettes we used to get each year at the end of the season as like our Homicide greatest hits, the whatever, season 2, season 3, season 4. The music was so integral to watching the show. The selection was so deliberate and intentional that I think I missed that some of the times if there wasn't a song that was there, but I don't know that other people would. But I think it's because I've saw it in, all of its intention. I think that it really just reminded me of how, I don't know that I could say it was groundbreaking, that the music, but it just reminded me of how important the music was to telling the story. And what a great job everybody did with selecting those choices.
I think it was groundbreaking. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just like, it just felt so organic and right. Nothing was ever forced in what they chose. And some of the songs were older songs, and some of the songs were contemporary songs, and it just all worked.
And the majority of our phone calls that we would field the next Monday after it aired were about, what song was that? What song was that?
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think it's really interesting to watch credits of shows subsequently and how they would end with it, essentially like the music list, so that maybe they could cut down on that phone traffic. But yeah. It was really, I think you're right, Greer. I think the music was so instrumental to the feel and the meaning behind the show, and helping to enliven those scripts even more. But I will just add on, yes, I love that those shows are available to us again. I think that's the most important thing, that we have them. And the colors pop differently now than they used to.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I'm older, and so the meaning of them pops differently now too.
Right.
Yeah.
And y'all know that it's free now on Tubi as well, not just on Peacock.
Wow.
I didn't.
Yeah, it was great to have them released. I thought I was going to sit down and day after day watch them all right through, but it wasn't that easy. I think I definitely noticed what Greer and Tracey were saying about the music, because the music, it was so intentional, and the songs were chosen to be part of the story almost, which you do see in other media as well. But so watching it without a lot of those songs that weren't able to carry on, it does feel like something's missing, because I know it should be there, but other watchers might not even notice, like Greer mentioned. But I think too, because I know the episode so well from the script, And we did have the watch parties. We watched them. I would watch dailies. Jim and I would sit and watch dailies together sometimes. And it was harder to watch them, a bunch of them, than I thought it was going to be. Not because I didn't enjoy them, not because I'm not proud of everything. I think just the busyness of life and trying to really commit to sitting down and rewatching that was harder than I thought it was going to be. So I've plucked, I've jumped to different seasons, watched a few here and a few there. And it feels great to see them and watch them, and does bring a flood of memories of everything behind the camera or outside the camera.
Yeah, I thought, knowing the script so well, as you say, Cathy, that certain things wouldn't hit me quite as much because I've seen them and then I saw them air, obviously when they aired in real time. One of the episodes I did go back and watch was A Doll's Eyes.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And I cried like a baby. And Jonah, who was my husband now, and he worked on the show, he saw what I was watching. Like, he came in, he saw I was watching, and he looked at me and said, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" And I was like, it's such a beautiful episode. It is such a beautiful episode. And it wrecked me when I first watched it, but it was one of the ones I had to watch again.
The script wrecked you. Like, when the script came out, everyone was just crying as they were reading it,
It has continued to wreck me over and over again. And I think it was Gary Basaraba. I don't remember who was in it, but it was also one of those things that I loved so much about Homicide in that episode. The realistic banter, or like the realistic conversation, that I think that they always did so well, the writers. Like, the father, his child is, in the ER or in surgery, brain dead, and it's when they're first at the hospital, and they have like the homicide detectives coming, and they're like, "Why are you here?" It was like kind of all this. And he was worried about his parking meter. Like, he's talking about like, "Oh, my park," it's such a real life thing that the nuance to that in the script was so, I just appreciated it so much now. Like, all of the emotions and all of the things that stirred up in us when we read it or whatever, obviously were profound and really hit me. But also just, I was like, wow, like this scene is so real. And really puts you in the frame of mind of this poor father who's like losing his child and doesn't know what to do and is focused on his parking meter. And, it was just really, 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 really real. And I don't know why, when that struck me when I watched it, I was like, this is one of the reasons I miss this show so much, is because when I watch other shows, it's a watermark that's not fair for me to have for other shows. But it's like, when I see them not do the real life moments in them, it's just like, gosh, I wish that, Homicide had, 20 seasons.
Right. Because there was each episode was like its own play almost. Yeah. And the background was the homicide, the events of the murders that they were investigating, but they were talking about sandwiches and divorce and trouble with women and, to get their laundry done and Andre trying to figure out the problems of the world and problems of humanity and, just everything else was just kind of in the background.
Yeah, I was thinking that specifically about Stakeout, because here's this the crime over it is this absolutely horrific crime. I mean, this guy that pays kids to procure young boys for him so he can torture them and murder them and bury them in Leakin Park. This horrific murder. But the story, 90% of the story is them all talking to each other in the Stakeout house. And that scene with Andre and Yaphet, where Yaphet's upset about his daughter's wedding. He has to get to the wedding, but he almost doesn't want to go because he doesn't have a great relationship with the daughter, and the daughter didn't tell him that she was going to get married, and Andre's fear of becoming a father And this is what they're talking about with this backdrop of this horrible crime and why they're there. But that's the poignancy of that scene. And also, it wasn't a short scene. It was a very played out, very deep, meaningful scene, right? It wasn't just like a quick one-off, like, oh, let's show some empathy for each other here. And that's what the show did so well. It just really was beautiful. And speaking of the music, the first scene where Andre comes back in season 5 and he gets out of the car and his foot hits the Belgian block, street in Fells Point, and the music starts. And that was one of those moments when I thought, because it was this really beautiful plaintive song, but I thought, I have to go back and look at the DVD because I have a feeling that's not the original song that went with that scene. Because it's just the whole scene is him trying to walk up the steps. His first day back, he has to pause in the middle of the big flight of stairs. And you obviously can see his determination and everything. But that was one of the points where, because I have gone back on a couple other occasions and checked the DVD to see if that was the original music or not. Sorry, go ahead, Tracey.
No, I'd just love to know what you find out, because I don't know if I remember exactly which song originally played when he steps his foot out onto the cobblestones, but I do recall that the Cowboy Junkies were used in the episode, and it wasn't from the album I had listened to during the research, but they had just come out with an album that year, and I was on repeat as I was doing my research and writing out my notes, listening to their CD over and over and over again. And I remember meeting with Yash at the Daily Grind to turn over my notes, and I said, "Hey, Yash, by the way, I'm clearly not the music director and it doesn't matter, but I just wanted you to know I've been listening to this CD over and over again, and here you go. Would you like to have it? It ties in so beautifully."
Wow.
Tracey, I can afford my own CD. Thank you for the tip.
But they did use the Cowboy Junkies in that episode?
They did, but like I said, we had a brilliant music. Was it a music director? Is that what the title was?
Chris Turgeson.
Chris, yes. He was brilliant.
Did the music,
He didn't need any advice from a young Tracy Fry by any means, but I just thought it was kind of this great, there was just something really beautiful about how plaintive those songs are in general and how it tied into that whole experience of stroke and stroke recovery.
I think Stephanie Fontana had some musical pieces that were maybe they eventually listened to and selected, certain bands or whatever. I mean, I remember listening to Joan Osborne was in it, and Bare Naked Ladies, and Bare Naked Ladies.
I think Stephanie was a fan of Bare Naked Ladies. I think that was one of the influences there.
Yeah, Cowboy Junkies. I mean, it will forever sort of be, I will never hear some of those songs or even some of those albums from that time without associating it with Homicide.
The Iguanas. That's another one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was on one of those tapes.
And that was another part of the uniqueness of Homicide, because we didn't operate in silos. It wasn't like post-production was over here and they were sacred and this was over here, that we, lived, worked, and played together and talked about things. And ideas came from everywhere. As far as we could ever see, the writers, like I said, are just brilliant. And they use current events, they use things overheard, they use their imaginations and just, put it all together into a masterpiece. So.
Masterpiece.
I've got a couple more questions. Where does Homicide sort of fit in with your kind of career experience?
Well, Tracey said something for me, and we're the same age or close to the same age. She said this today, a version of it, but she said a different version of it before. She said, it's so important. I did all of my growing up on that show. And I feel the same way. I was not a grown up before I probably wasn't one when I left either, but I was more of one. But I really feel like it's about the people, the people shepherded us along. I was talking about Andre, we felt seen. That's something that people say now and we didn't say in 1995 or whatever, but like, you felt seen, you were heard. There was a collaboration that was just inherent to the relationships that we all built with one another. I find that I hope to always kind of replicate that. I mean, I think in my later years as a producer, you become a leader. And so if if you're lucky, you're able to like emulate or whatever some of your mentors. And so for me to have that as my foundation, to have those people and all of the people on that show, I did all my growing up. It taught me so much.
Thank you for that.
So thank you for that quote, Tracey.
Yeah.
I steal it often.
Right. And
Anytime.
for me, it was a little bit of not the opposite, but I did have a number of great experiences and some bad ones. You learned from those too, prior to coming to Homicide. And then the 4 or 5 seasons I did on Homicide, when I left that, starting a family, I worked freelance on smaller things after that. So from there, I kind of went down. And then because of the nature of the film industry in Maryland and it not having a whole lot of support from some, the industry changed and became location shooting became driven by tax incentives that states or countries offer now. So Maryland got on board a little bit, and they have created a little bit of a tax incentive package over the years, but not enough to really draw a great amount of production like places like Atlanta, Georgia have, or other states. So for me to try to work here on bigger things didn't seem quite so feasible. So I went out and got a whole nother career. And I work in education now I taught in the classroom for a little bit, and now I work in a different capacity. But so Homicide was kind of closer to the end of my, or maybe I won't say the end because I always feel like a film production person. It's
right.
So it's really in my DNA. It's where I shine. But you just do what you do in life and move along. So, right. So I sort of passed it off to other capable people and do other things now. So,
Thank you. Tracey, are any thoughts you had there?
Sure. I should just say that Homicide was like a family for me. I did do all of my growing up there. I felt like it was the best experience I could have had. And these are the people here, Chris, like Susan, Greer, and Cathy, all were mentors to me, whether they knew it or not. They all were role models to me. And I love all of them dearly for it. And it is through Homicide and my connections to Greer and Pat that I wound up going on to a little bit more of a film-ish career for a very brief amount of time. And then I retired from that, stayed home with children for a few years, and then I made my way to higher ed. So I've been in higher ed ever since.
Oh, wow.
I think the one connection that I would have with that is that I had no idea what Jesuit education was until I was reading scripts about Andre and Pendleton.
Right.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Pendleton on
Who
Homicide.
Who knew, right? Yeah.
Right. And now I'm at a Jesuit university. It's a great one. It's called Loyola University, Maryland. So I'm still, located in Baltimore for work. And that's my career there. I got to, because of Greer and because of Pat, I had 4 wonderful years being John Waters' assistant. That was an amazing opportunity and experience. And so I've had a really lovely life and career as a result of being at Homicide and being interviewed by Cathy, who was wearing a sheriff's badge at the time. It was so much fun.
Thank you all for sharing it.
We had a lot of fun.
I have one last question. What I was going to ask was, so we found out the camera department were living off gizzards and the writers are living off scrapple. So what were the production office living off?
Bagels.
Oh, we went to restaurants.
Yeah, they had time to go do those things.
I didn't go to restaurants. Did we go to
Bagels.
restaurants?
No,
It
I went
was
to restaurants
bagels.
with Jimmy
Yeah,
and
so
Ford.
Jimmy and
I saw you guys pile out of the production office at lunchtime to go wherever you were going. Where'd you have a favorite place? You have
Yeah.
favorite places?
Well, Cathy, you probably went to Ding Hao quite a bit.
Ooh,
Ding
what's
Hao,
Ding
Tony
Hao?
Chang's,
Yeah.
which was over in
Tony
Mount
Chang's.
Vernon. That was a
Yeah.
Jimmy favorite.
Oh,
I miss it
wow.
there a lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
Where else did we go to eat?
Tony
And I thought I wrote
Chang's.
that down because
Wow.
I noticed that you ask everybody where they
Right.
eat, and food is not my favorite subject.
We would get food from Dudas a lot.
We had Dudas. We had John Stevens.
We had John Stevens.
We-
We would go to the Grind to get Powerhouse sandwiches.
Oh, yeah. Those are so good with that hummus.
What was a powerhouse sandwich? Was the
It was hummus and
A bunch of vegetables.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I later found out that the hummus that they used was called Hannah. I don't think they make it anymore, but it was at Costco. So I was like, because we were obsessed with them. And
Oh my God.
I mean,
So you make them-
so I would make them at home. I mean, they never tasted the same. I think the bread there was much better. But
Right.
I ate so many bagels on that show, and they were all from the Grind, I guess. And I started my Old Bay bagel situation there because I wanted it to be a little more flavorful, and we are in Baltimore. I would sprinkle, and we had Old Bay on the craft service table. I would sprinkle Old Bay on it. And every once in a while, I would get a text message from Ford Wilgus throughout the years that would say, I'm sprinkling Old Bay on my bagel and thinking about you.
I'm going to try
So,
that. That's brilliant.
It's actually
Was that like with
tasty.
salmon or something? Or?
No, it was just with cream cheese. I mean, it's better if you have something else on it, but yeah, it's a very
It's so
Baltimore.
funny because Towson Hot Bagels, which has obviously they have one in Towson, but they also have one near me in Owings Mills, and they have Old Bay bagels, and that's like one of my brother's favorite things is to get the Old Bay bagels when we go over there.
So good.
It works on everything.
Yeah,
Everything.
it does.
It's
Absolutely.
great in mayonnaise. I've been making a little sauce recently for stuff. It's really good.
Well, for years, I would make an artichoke dip for like, I don't know, Super Bowl or, whatever. And I would instead of paprika, I would put Old Bay in it. And people would think it was crab dip. Because the chunks of the artichoke, so it's like my poor man's version.
That's great.
And they would say like, "What do you put in it?" And I was like, "Oh, I can't tell you, but it's just Old Bay. Save yourself $50 and put Old Bay."
Right,
in.
exactly. Open a can of
Love it.
tuna and put some Old Bay on it.
Exactly.
Tastes like crab.
Excellent. Suze, is there anything else you'd like to ask, or are we?
No, unless anybody wants. So Greer. So you two you two, Tracey and Cathy, left the business like I did. The Homicide was the last thing I did. And so Greer, do you want to mention anything that you've been working on recently besides, is Power 2 the most recent thing?
Yeah. So after Homicide ended, Jimmy wanted me to come to New York and work with him in New York. And like I said, he sort of pushed me and had more, faith in me, I guess, or belief in me than I did in myself. And actually, Cathy, I was like, no, I can't go. I don't think I can go. I don't know. This is, it's too much. People in New York, they're going to be
Scary.
Yeah. Well, they're going to be so much better than me. And why would I, even try to go into that industry up there? Which is not the case. But,
Right.
in Baltimore, we have quite a strong crew. And I was not going to go. And then Cathy kind of talked me into it. I think Jimmy was like, talk to her.
Yeah, because I had done that FBI pilot up there with Jimmy and Tom. They had wrote a script for an FBI show for New York, and I'd gone up on a season break and did that up there. And I was like, "Oh, New York's a piece of cake with Jimmy standing next to you."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, Greer, you're going to be totally fine." So
Yeah. And I learned up here, actually, when I came up to do Oz, that Jim is referred to as Big Jim because he has a son who they just call Jimmy. So they'd be like, "Oh, you worked with Big Jim," So, and he has quite a, he's well respected and was very well respected up here. So Cathy was absolutely right. So I worked on Oz, and I worked for a few years, and I worked on some different Tom and Jimmy shows. We did The Beat, which was with Barry, which was like kind of short-lived, but we did The Jury. We did a bunch of stuff. And then I started working with a couple of producers, or a few producers who did Damages, and then worked with them for a number of years. We did a show called Bloodline in Florida. And I came back after Bloodline, and Bloodline was also like lightning in a bottle. I mean, it was really a wonderful show and a lovely group of people. I'm very blessed with all of the people who I've met throughout the years. And then I started to work with on a pilot called Get Christy Love with Courtney Kemp, and the next season, I think they were finishing season 5 of Power when we did that pilot. And then the next season, they were looking for a line producer for Power season 6. And they hired me. And so I've been working on the Power shows since then. So I worked on Power season 6, which was kind of like a season and a half. It was a very long season. And then, which was the final season. And then we began Power Book 2, and I worked on Power Book 2 Ghost, which did 4 seasons. And right after the strikes, it sort of finished up. And, right now, I don't know, there's some other, in the Power universe, we call it, there's some other shows that are waiting to be greenlit, and maybe that'll happen, or maybe, who knows where the journey will take me. But I feel extremely blessed that I've worked on so many projects with so many interesting people, and so many people that I've wanted to work with show after show. I mean, a lot of people's careers don't track that way. They work with a group of people, and then another group of people, and then another group of people. And so I've been really lucky to kind of hang with a group of people because we work similarly and have a similar mindset to, how we achieve, running the shows. So
yeah, that's great. It's great to get hooked up with a crew that you stay with for years.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference.
Yeah. And, the people change out, like, different seasons. You have maybe a producer that's there more than others, and, or they move on to their own projects. Courtney has a deal with Netflix now, and, so it's different people on some of these projects. But a lot of people remain the same. And as Cathy said, like each season, for different reasons, people have babies, people get married, people move, people, so you're always meeting new people, even if you're staying with a lot of the same people.
Right. Cool.
Excellent. Well, thank you, all of you, Cathy, Greer, and Tracey, for sharing those stories and your thoughts and your time with us today. It's been really great to chat with you all.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for spending the time. It's been really fun. Really fun reconnecting.
Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out too. There's a couple other people that came through the production office. Debbie Boyd Krulak was an assistant coordinator after Kerry, and Karen Sirota came on when Debbie didn't come back. And then we just had a host of great office PAs. So I'm so glad to hear that you're going to investigate that more. You've already spoken to Paul Flinton, who moved into the sound department, but the office was a really good place for some people to get their feet wet and see what all the departments were doing and feel where their heart would take them. So we had Chris, another Chris that was in the office had gone on and worked with the grip department, and Gabriel Goodenough started out in the production office and moved into becoming fairly well-known documentary director and producer. So just it did spawn a lot of careers from people coming to get their feet wet to saying, wow, I like how this is done, and taking that forward. So.
Yeah, and I think that's why it warrants its own episode for the listeners, because a lot of people don't know how to get into the business, or they think, oh, I got to start at this level or this level. And a lot of times the best place to start is at the very bottom, because then you get a chance to taste everything in every department and work with all kinds of people. And so I think it definitely warrants its own episode to talk to production assistants from different departments and how they started and where they are now.
Right.
Well, I have to thank Cathy, because I know Tracey and I, when Cathy left, it was like fairly traumatic for us. We were like, oh my God, Cathy's leaving. She's been, but we all talk about Jimmy being a mentor, which he was to so many, but Cathy was really my mentor too. And just seeing the way she worked, like she never freaked out. Ever. There were reasons to freak out, such as needing another helicopter. I mean, there were reasons to freak out. And I never saw Cathy lose her cool. And I was like, that's what I want to be like that. And so throughout my career, people have always said to me, you're so calm under pressure. You don't freak out. You don't whatever. Well, that's because I watched Cathy. So thank you.
Thank you,
That's
Greer.
great. Yay.
I learned from a lot of good people. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That was terrific.
Thank you all.
So that was Cathy, Kerry, Greer and Tracey from the production office, and that was quite a chat, to be honest with you. So many things stood out. I don't know if there's anything in particular for you that stood out, Susan.
I think a lot of things stood out. Once again, I'll say it again because I say it every time, the origin stories. And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I did not know most of their backgrounds. The fact that Greer had been a psychology major first before trying film studies, even though her mom was in the business and she had sampled the business and been around the business. But what a great background to have working in a production office with the kind of tension and emotions that come through from every part, from every department, from all the actors. All had to go through the production office, and to have a psychology background, to be able to not that you would be, counseling people, but that you would understand, maybe better understand people's emotions and things with having that kind of background. I thought that was really cool to hear. Also, that Cathy, I didn't know Cathy had, worked in Philly and Los Angeles and West Virginia and had been around many other places in production before settling here. I thought that was cool.
And she worked on the other Homicide, the David Mamet film that then complicated the title rights to the TV show.
Yes. When she said she worked on Homicide, the movie, I was like, what? Wait, what? For a second, until I was like, oh yeah, of course, there's the David Mamet movie.
Which is a good film in itself, very different.
Yes,
but very
totally
good,
different, yeah. And Kerry also, her background, listening to, she came out of a different film department at a different university, 20 minutes, half an hour away from where I went at UMBC. And all the people, just like UMBC, all the people that came out, at least in her year, were people that ended up in the business and were very influential in commercial production here and all kinds of production. So that was cool to hear her, and to hear the names that she mentioned along the way of who many of us, many of the production houses and people that we worked with before we landed on Homicide or before we landed on bigger projects, was pretty cool. Yeah, and then the fact that Tracey and Cathy both went off into different careers after having children, going into education. So that was interesting. And then Greer, of course. Well, for all of them, I would, as we have before, encourage people to look at IMDb pages, and absolutely look at their IMDb pages. Kerry produced a really good documentary called "The Game Is Up," which I would encourage people to watch because it's very prescient right now about what's happening politically, even though it was made during Trump's first administration. It's a great documentary. And then Greer stayed in the film business, full time, and really has quite the resume. After
Yeah, well, she
post
works on that
office,
show Power and other
yeah,
things. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So all their careers are much I didn't know about before and after
Mm.
Homicide. So that was really cool. That was really cool to hear.
Yeah, yeah, and it was such a great overview of sort of the various logistics of an episode, especially also the budgeting of an episode. It was interesting hearing about the Amore budget, which is the long-term costs over a season for like the sets, costume versus then the production budget, which is kind of a guidelines of what each episode should cost. But as we talked, as I think it was Greer was telling us about like bottle episodes and why they're sometimes necessary because some episodes have a higher budget than others, and so you need to kind of balance the books over the seasons. That was very interesting.
Right. And I loved when we asked that, we always ask that question, what were the most challenging episodes for you? And
Yeah.
Cathy talked about, of course, Hostage 1 and 2, which was just a massive, show with the helicopter and the pot-bellied pig. I mean, everything in that episode. But then the difficulty of getting people to come in for the episode that happened during the '96 blizzard stakeout.
Great episode as well.
And I love that. I love that story about Yaphet trying to get there and calling in
Yes.
every half an hour saying, we got another 20 miles. We got here, we got there. They think she said they made it to Pittsburgh, and that's as far as they could get. And yeah, I mean, I remember that blizzard, but I don't remember trying to get to work. I mean, obviously, if they called it off, I don't know. I don't, did somebody come by in their Jeep? Because I think Dave had a Jeep at that point. Yeah, it's memory. It's a touchy thing.
Yes. No, indeed, indeed, indeed.
But those were great. I love those. I love those stories.
Yeah, the office story is great. You can imagine it would have made a brilliant episode in itself, isn't it? G trying to get back to the
Right.
office whilst caught in a blizzard. I mean, that would have been a really cool episode, actually. I could see
Yeah.
that.
And it's just the little insights that I never knew about the printer, and everybody hanging out
Yes.
around, how important that printer was, because of course they couldn't email or text anybody anything. So the printer and the fax machine and the phone were the main modes of communication. And they opened that little door and saw the bay. They saw the bay, the
Yeah.
harbor water 10 inches below, because of course we were on a pier. We were built on a pier. Um, and if that had steps that went down even from the main level we had, they were with the water lapping. And it's interesting now, and I think somebody did sort of touch on that for a second. Whenever we have very heavy rain now, all of the southern part of Fells Point is flooded. All the streets
Yeah.
are flooded. I remember that happening once, but it must be happening more often there. I do remember Alex, who was our video assist operator. He lived nearby in a row house a couple blocks away. And I remember one morning when it was flooded like that he said he walked downstairs and his tiles on the first floor squished because the water had come up through the floor. But yeah, I don't remember that happening anymore. But yeah, so the harbor right underneath their office. And I thought that was a cool story when she talked about Reed having come in, um, into this ensemble cast and having to catch up with everything, and waiting at the printer for the script to come out, and sitting there and
Yeah.
reading the script as soon as it came out.
Yeah, it gave me flashbacks to our interview with him because I remember him mentioning he used to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just the whole idea. I think most people, when they see credits go by, if they watch credits, most people don't watch credits anyway, might see the producer credit at the beginning of a film or a television show. And a producer is a much different level than the production office managers, or the unit production managers, what we used to call them. Um, because the unit production managers and the assistant production office coordinators, which is who these women were, and production office assistants, like we said in the interview, they are the people. They're like the heart of the show that pumps the blood out to every limb and every appendage of the show to keep it working. And I think most people don't really understand that. They are the headquarters. They're the HQ from which everything emanates, and to make the show work. And an incredible amount of juggling of logistics to do with not 100 people. I mean, with a handful of office crew, of which they were.
Yeah, indeed. And I thought Greer's observations, there were some really great Jim Finney stories. And one thing that came up was Jim Finney had this ability to see qualities in people that people didn't necessarily see in themselves, and it led to people being promoted and him really sort of supporting them. And that was really, really nice to hear. And there was also another interesting observation, also from Greer, about how Jim said that whenever you're on a set and things are not going quite right, always ask the key grip what went wrong that day, because they always have this sort of point of view if they're on it and know exactly what's going on.
I love that. It's like, she said, I'd go to, you'd go to the director, you'd go to the camera person or the cinematographer and find out what's happening. But if you want the real story, go to the key grip. Because of course the key grip is in the middle of it. And his dolly grip would be there in the middle, pushing the dolly or, moving things around. But interesting. May have a more unvarnished and a more unvarnished way of putting things about what was actually happening. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And then the fact that all of them said, in addition to what they learned from Jim, they all said they carried forward what they learned from Cathy. They were all very complimentary of what a great leader Cathy was, and that she never blew her top. And that Greer said she went on to try to be the kind of producer and production coordinator who keeps calm in the middle of the storm, which I think is really an art and really hard to do.
Hard.
And I think that actually you have to be genetically predisposed to being able to be that way.
Yeah, because a lot of crazy things happen on film sets and long days as well, and it just becomes sort of, you're all human beings, and sometimes it's easy to lose one's temper when you get frustrated, which is not always a good thing. And
yes, and I'm sure you have, and I certainly have worked with producers and production managers who were screamers.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, who and I think that coming from the crew at the top, keeping things in order. The thing is like they are the people that plan everything, right? But you can try to plan everything you want to plan on a film or a TV shoot, and it will always go sideways. It literally will always go off script.
I find every day I'm filming, the second we arrive, we're somehow an hour behind schedule before we've even started, because of something.
Right. It's like, what do you mean the electricity's not working in this building that we just?
Oh man, yeah.
It's just all the Whoever remembers a day on a film shoot or on a set where everything went the way it was planned?
Yeah.
It just literally down to, it's a beautiful day, and then there's a snowstorm.
No, that snowstorm's
but
crazy.
And to keep what's that old adage? To keep your head while all of those around you are losing theirs. What's the end of that? That's the beginning.
Oh, I don't know. In the UK, we have this thing about grace under fire.
Exactly.
Like we admire people who are graceful in stressful situations.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's that whole. Right. But I hope people stuck with this episode, because there's just so many insights that I think most people, including me, who worked in the film business for 20 years, heard insights and things that I didn't know, not just personally about them, but to think about the inner workings of a production that none of us, unless you're in that office, are privy to, basically.
Yeah, well, that Jim Finessy comment about the grips made total sense to me, and at the same time was like a real lesson as well. I think I'll definitely carry that with me as well from now on. Any bigger productions, and when we actually have a grip, I'll be definitely seeking out the key grip should anything go wrong. You know? Yes. Oh my goodness.
Did we get a comment about your food question? I can't remember. They talked about going out to lunch and where they went to lunch.
I've got it.
Yeah.
I was trying to find the name of the sandwich while you were chatting because I've forgotten, and it's called the Powerhouse Sandwich. So
the Powerhouse. That's so funny that you never heard of that.
Yeah. No,
never. That's a ubiquitous.
Never.
That's ubiquitous here. It's not just the Daily Grind. They're everywhere. Oh. You could get one at Starbucks. They're everywhere.
Mainly a vegetarian sandwich. I'm looking at it now.
It's usually like super crunchy bread with seeds, crunchy bread with sprouts, and depending on whatever seasonal sliced vegetables, and if you are allowed to eat cheese, usually Munster cheese for some reason. I guess you could probably ask for any kind of cheese. But yeah, it's a vegetable sandwich, basically.
I'd never heard of one before, but I'm looking at it now. It looks very nice. And I will attempt to make one. But as Greer said, as she's attempted to make them, they've never tasted the same.
Well, that's because in England, it would be like, what? You didn't put any mutton on that? Come on.
Any mutton? Oh my goodness!
We need some mutton on that.
Do you know what? Do you know where you buy mutton now? So mutton's not that common in England anymore, unless you go to really fancy restaurants.
That's an 1890s joke.
Yeah, but I tell you what, though, mutton's coming back. It really is. So that's a whole other topic. But there's a very expensive restaurant in London called St. John's. It was Anthony Bourdain's favourite restaurant. And you pay top dollar for mutton now.
Yeah. Well, we won't get into what mutton is, but it's a way to do something with your old sheep, basically. Right?
Yeah. But actually, can be very tasty if done well. Probably up there with gizzards, but
right. Oh my God.
Oh man. So
but I do remember. I do remember being slightly jealous when I would see them on their way out. Like maybe if we were shooting out front, or I was out front for some reason, and I saw them piling out of the production office, all getting ready to go to lunch together. It's like, oh man, that must be kind of nice. Oh, we did that. I mean, we did that too, but I always felt like we were in such a rush to like run up and, grab a sub or some pizza and bring it back, or wolf it down wherever we were.
Yeah. Looking at the sandwich menu at the Daily Grind, I think I would have been living off turkey, bacon, ham, club sandwiches. Probably what I would have chosen.
Well, and who knows whether that's the same, probably not the same menu from 30 years ago.
No. Or turkey pesto. Oh, that sounds
I'm trying
good.
to remember if they even had sandwiches way back then. I guess they did. I don't remember.
Well, they definitely had the Powerhouse. But
yeah, there you go. That was maybe their main. And probably why I don't remember it, because I rarely got a Powerhouse sandwich. Because I needed to have some mutton, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, well, there we go. That's where the camera department went wrong. You had gizzards instead.
Right. But great. And I really thanks to all four of them.
Yes.
For coming on and just for being, as many of our guests have been, so candid and open, and also you can still feel, and that's what I love about this podcast. I mean, sometimes in between our episodes, I go, should we keep doing this? And blah, blah, blah. But when you talk to them, and everybody talks about what a special experience it was for them, and that how much they learned going forward, and how just how influential not just the show was, but how influential their experiences on the show were for them. The rest of their lives, and how dearly most, I'm not going to say all, because there are plenty of people that had difficult experiences on this show for sure. But how dearly most people we have spoken to, and most people I know, have kept this experience in their hearts, in an industry that can be very harsh, and it's an industry that can be very harsh. For people to 30 years later to still have these really sort of wonderful feelings about it. It's always great to hear those stories. That it remains for many people a very special a very special part of their lives.
Yeah. The more I hear, the more I can sort of see why. I mean, it was such a, as we say many times, such a unique show, and nothing really compares. As actually Greer was sort of alluding to as well a little bit. She was finding that she maybe, she said it this way, but felt Homicide slightly spoilt her because no other show from a narrative point of view quite hits the same territory as Homicide does. And it might be too high a bar to hold other shows too. But yeah, Homicide has a very unique place in television history.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, and I think people that don't get that haven't really delved into the show very far. Or
well, and its obscurity for many years didn't help matters either, sadly, because if you didn't catch it in the 90s, it then required,
disappeared.
It just disappeared. And the only people who really kind of kept hold of it were the people who'd seen it before and had these sort of relationships with the show. And it got overshadowed by The Wire in many ways. So, not that that's a bad, The Wire is a fantastic show. It's just Homicide's quite different. So.
Yes, very different.
Yeah.
Very different. Yeah, I mean, you look at shows like All in the Family and, the Andy Griffith Show and these shows that have lived in repeats forever. And the Carol Burnett Show, all these shows from the 70s that still existed, but Homicide went off the map. After
it's amazing,
it stopped
actually.
being shown. Why wasn't it shown in repeats on NBC somewhere?
It's so sad because shows like Law and Order on season 20 something,
right?
And NCIS and stuff like that, which they're all very enjoyable shows and nothing against them at all. And I think it's partly because just Homicide was such a cutting edge and maybe slightly controversial show because it was edgy. It was it was talking about topics that were difficult to talk about even now, and that's why it's still so relevant. And I think sadly that kind of content just doesn't it's very hard to write to that standard consistently for 20 plus years, and I think B, also just because it's so controversial, people shy away from it, and that could also maybe explain why it didn't repeat as often as other shows.
And I mean, not just okay, we had our 7 seasons, okay, that just have that, but the fact that it was never, after it was on court TV for, I don't even know if it was a season or 2. The fact that it was never shown it was never shown after that is just weird.
No,
it's weird.
No.
Yeah.
I do remember in London, my one favourite Homicide memory of viewing it randomly. There's a place called ICCO, which is the Italian coffee company. And they make these excellent pizzas for very little money. It's a very cheap place to go. And it's usually, the branch I went into is all metal as well. So it kind of has this sort of weird American dinery feel. And suddenly I was ordering this pizza. It's like summer of 2004. Ordering this pizza, my friend John. Suddenly I see John Munch on the television behind me. And it's like, oh my God, it's Homicide. And it was a repeat of Homicide on some random channel. But that's the only time I've ever caught it by fluke. It's I've had to always seek it out. Otherwise.
Yeah, and think about how long. Well, it's all that thing about the whole music thing. I don't know. The fact that streaming had been around for so long before it finally got out there. And I'm going to say once again, kudos that it's on Tubi for free now. Tell everybody, you don't have to get a subscription. Sorry, Peacock, but you don't need a subscription now to see it. But hopefully that'll mean that more people will stumble on it. And maybe more people will see, in the little slider as the photos go by, they'll see Andre, they'll see somebody that they recognize. They recognize Andre from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and jump in and see what's it all about.
Yeah, and you've just reminded me, I loved the Andre Braugher story about Tracey's retro trousers, or as we call them over here, trousers, not pants. But
Right. I love it. Hey, nice pants. And then when Kyle gets a lecture from Andre about, And the funny thing is whether or not he gave Kyle a lecture or whether, Andre just told Tracey that he gave Kyle a lecture about it.
I like to think he did.
It would be funny. But yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. Who was it that said, it was either Greer or Cathy that said they'd had their Me Too moments on other productions, but not on Homicide. And I almost piped up and said, oh, lucky you.
Yeah.
Because I certainly had them, and it may have been just because I was in, a woman in boys' clothes doing a boy's job, that I heard more. And a lot of it was in jest, but it would get to you after a while.
What was it,
you
sort of
know,
like derogatory comments or
yes,
aimed at
yes,
you or
yeah,
just yeah?
yes,
Oh, I'm
yes.
sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just, you're working with a big, 100 guys. It's just going to happen. And I grew up with a big brother, and I had a pretty thick skin about stuff like that. But it was interesting to me that she said that they had not experienced that. So that was
Yeah.
a good environment then for them in the office.
It's sad to hear what those sort of things have happened and still do happen. And I was recently on a majority female production. It was really interesting because it was a very different vibe, and I really liked it. So it's like,
Oh, yeah.
we need more women, in positions on film sets, because I
Mhm.
think it does diffuse some of this sort of nasty commentary that seems to, come up from time to time.
Well, it's interesting. Even if you
Yeah.
were on an all-female production and you wanted to you wanted to say some derogatory comments to the few men that were on the show, it's like,
Yeah.
what are those? Like, what are those comments? We're so used to hearing, the smarmy comments about women. It's like, what are the comments about men, that you would do?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just funny what's sort of baked into our culture.
I
Um,
know, and hopefully
but
that will change.
but,
But yeah,
I mean, on the
mm,
whole, it was, it was normally, all fun and jest and all that.
mm,
But,
mm,
yeah, and I'd had certainly other experiences on other shows that were not as positive, and I would say that, on the whole was in that respect, was mostly positive in that respect.
yeah, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add about this episode?
I don't think so. It was great.
Yeah, what a great episode, and thank you again to Cathy, Kerry, Greer, and Tracey for sort of sharing those stories. It's been, I really enjoyed this episode. I've learned a lot from it, and I think there's some really cool little nuggets in there. And also, we heard a little bit about Bicycle Bruce as this behind the scenes
Yes.
character that I don't think you would have ever heard of, unless you either listened to this show or knew somebody from Homicide and found out about it.
Yeah. Or you lived in Fells Point and you knew him personally.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
indeed. So
Dundalk or, that
yeah, he was a
general
real
area. He
local
was
sort of
everywhere.
celebrity. Yeah. Did he
Yeah.
pass away? Do we know what happened?
I think so, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
No. Okay. Well, if Bicycle Bruce is out there, do let us know. But if not, then I hope I hope he rests in peace, because he sounded like an interesting character. Cool. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening today, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.